Schauen wir mal, was die Schönes zu bieten haben. Ich bin zuversichtlich. Nee. Sehr gut. So, ich bin komplett zuversichtlich. Ich lasse mich komplett überraschen. Wieso, Koppel? Hätten wir zusammen Quickplay spielen können. Das stimmt. Ich weiß gar nicht, wie lange das geht. Aber vielleicht können wir danach noch 1, 2 Runden machen. Kommt drauf an, aber ich muss morgen um 5 aufstehen. Das heißt, ich habe nicht so viel Dingens. Aber vielleicht können wir es danach machen. Autsch! 5 Uhr. Das wird furchtbar morgen. Ah. So. Zumindest lustig. Ich habe hier ein neues Kabel. Ne, ihr erinnert euch, ich habe doch mal das Problem gehabt, dass ich da das Headset reinkriege. Ich habe jetzt ein magnetisches USB-Kabel. Ich habe mir mal so ein magnetisches USB-Kabel jetzt gekauft. Da steckt der Anschluss im Headset drin und ich muss bloß mit einem Magneten das dann anschließen. Ist mega gut. Fantastisch! Ja. Nie wieder versuchen, dieses blöde Micro-USB-Kabel reinzupfriemeln. Und dann schauen, wie rum muss man es reinpacken. Einfach nur Magnet dran und gut ist. So, ich lehne mich entspannt zurück. Ich lausche, was Overwatch zu erzählen hat und ich hoffe sehr, dass es was ist, was ich feiere. Ich erwarte mir nicht weniger als absolute Perfektion jetzt und morgen Content für Overwatch 1. Dass er Bescheid wisst.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Overwatch 2 Developer PVP Livestream. I'm your host, Matt Mr. X, and throughout the stream I'll be joined by some awesome content creators and developers from the Overwatch team as we learn more about Overwatch 2's PvP by watching some of these awesome maps in action played live. It's going to be an extremely exciting day. As Aaron mentioned during the developer update, everything you see today is work in progress, but being able to see some of this stuff day in and day out, it's truly awesome. Really excited for what the Overwatch team has to show for you guys today. So let's bring on some of my guests throughout the day. I'll be joined by the members of the Overwatch dev team. It's Associate Art Director Dion Rogers, Lead Hero Designer Jeff Goodman, and Game Director Aaron Keller. How you guys feeling today?
Yeah, so much for having us.
Yeah, no, it's going to be exciting. Now, we've learned so much about the PvE aspect of Overwatch 2. We've learned some stuff about, PvP, with push, role passives, new heroes. You saw Sojourn at BlizzCon Line. What else has gone into the development process for Overwatch 2's PvP?
You're right. We've talked a lot about the story side of Overwatch 2 and the cooperative PvE experience that we've been working on. But the Overwatch team has also been hard at work on the PvP side of the game. We're making new features, new heroes, new maps, some of which we'll be playing today. And we've also been looking at the way PvP is played. It's changed over time on the live game. And we'll talk about a lot of the changes that we want to be making and that we're currently making to PvP. But there's one in particular that I want to highlight right now because it's substantial and I think it has a big impact on the way the entire team approaches PvP on Overwatch 2. And it's also something that we're all really excited about. Overwatch has always been played with 2 teams of 6 players. Overwatch 2 will be played with 2 teams of 5 players, consisting of 2 support, 2 DPS, and 1 tank.
Right, I was gonna. I mean, my next question was gonna be like, okay, like is role queue
What?
still a thing? So we still have a breakdown across the board. It's not completely open. So 1 tank, 2 DPS, 2 supports. What led you guys down the road to make this change?
There are a lot of reasons for why we wanted to make this change. As I said earlier, Overwatch has changed over time. We've gone from having no hero limits at all in the game before launch. You could pick
What?
6 Winstons if you wanted to for your team composition, to having a hero limit. We ended up introducing a role lock over the course of the game, and we feel like this is the next step in the way that Overwatch ought to be played. If you think about it, there is a lot going on in an Overwatch map. It is incredibly fast-paced, and we have always tried to make our combat easy to read and very understandable. And even with all of the work that we put into that, sometimes it's just hard to track what 11 other players are doing on the battlefield. Removing 2 of those simplifies everything, and it allows players to understand everything that's happening around them and to be able to make better choices because of it.
Was passiert
This
denn mit den
change
ganzen
obviously has
Tanks?
a really big impact on tanks. And we will get into some of the changes that we're making to tanks and to some of the other roles in a bit. But tanks can be problematic. They're a DPS hero is simple. They're shooting. But a tank has abilities that can be noisy, or when stacked with other tanks can cause problems for other teams to try to overcome and counter. Like, and a great example of that is 2 main tanks on the field. Sometimes that can be very oppressive to another team.
Ich stelle mir gerade vor, was machst du mit einem Team, wo du einen Wrecking Ball hast? Was passiert dann?
Out there is a greater chance of certain people being able to carry. Whether that's the tank on the team or some of the DPS, there's just one less player on the other team that you need to take care of, and each player now has the opportunity to have a larger individual impact on their own team. And we've tried a lot of different versions of this. Internally, we've tried 4v4 format. We've tried 3 DPS, 2 support, 1 tank format. We even, early on in Overwatch development, we tried a 7v7 format of the game. And we always had some problems with them. And this is the sort of thing that our lead hero designer, Jeff Goodman, has really run with, and I think he probably has a little more he can say about it.
Yeah, you forgot about the 4 DPS, 1 tank, 1 healer we ran one time. That was that was literally one play test. And it was
that
like
was one play test, and we swore we would never do it again.
Almost cut out in the middle of that play
never to be spoken about
Das ist
again.
ein krasser Change,
Jeff,
weil du hast dann...
that, obviously, changes to the tank role, but I assume there will be kind of like holistic changes overall, right? I think just changing the tanks, you probably need to rework some of the other stuff that goes on.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a kind of change. So that impacts like the huge part of the game, obviously, and that's the thing about sort of hero design and hero balance is like it's sort of easy in some sense. Honestly, it's easy, but it's certainly easier to make sort of a single hero change, and maybe even like a hero rework like we've done in the past. But to change something so fundamental as there's only 1 tank allowed, really kind of cascades into a lot of different questions and problems that demand answers. So, I mean, the obvious thing that probably comes up in people's mind probably immediately when we say this is, how does Roadhog work in a world where you could pick Reinhardt instead? Like, how is that as an equivalent pick? So that's sort of our first question when we first were doing it too. Like, we like this 5v5 thing. It was super fun when we play tested it. That has a lot of promise, but okay, we have to solve a lot of problems if we go this way. So that's sort of why it sort of has led to this larger set of changes, and there's a lot of other changes we'll talk about as well, but it definitely cascades. For example, healing, you can kind of focus on 1 tank now, and the tanks are even beefier than they are on live, the individual tanks, because this is one of them. So we're thinking, well, is it too good to just play like 2 main healers and dump healing in your tank, and is it too hard to kill now, and maybe healing is too good now, and it's but this is the time to do it. This is what we wanted to do with Overwatch 2, is look at core things like this and make sure that we want them to be. And
Da bin ich echt gespannt, wie das funktioniert dann.
I'm not a designer, but I think that like this is the first real opportunity you guys have had to reset. Like you couldn't just do this.
Weil das Problem ist, Reinhard ist dann komplett sinnlos, wenn sie den nicht komplett ändern vom Playstyle. Weil sein Schild explodiert. Er kommt nicht rechtzeitig an die Gegner hin. Und hat keine Zarya, die ihn bubbelt, dass er ein bisschen Damage weghält.
That are also equally impactful. So it's sort of like we just like shook the ground underneath the game like really heavily, and like all the pieces are kind of in disarray a little bit. So some of the heroes won't even be playable really by our playtesters here, because they're either heroes we're already kind of looking at heavily, or we plan on looking at heavily, so it's kind of not worth showing them in this context, or ones that we haven't addressed yet, things like that. So that just sort of gives you context of like how big this kind of change is.
Well, I want to get right into the game. I want to see it live. I'm sure the fans want to see it live after getting all this like info. The first map we're going to be showing you guys today is New York City. Dion, what kind of map is this?
New York is a hybrid map, so a brand new hybrid map for Overwatch 2, and there's a fun new payload for players to battle over. The world building team had a great time just creating this Overwatch depiction of New York. Tons of neat details and fun Easter eggs for the players to find. So I think it should be fun to take a look at this.
Yeah, no,
kann man Overwatch 1 PvP und Overwatch 2 PvP mixen.
I was so excited. Obviously,
Ich glaube, es gibt kein Overwatch 1.
Myself would love
Es
to see
gibt eine Overwatch 2.
Go over some of the adjustments that you guys have made to it here in Overwatch 2.
Ich glaube, die ändern alles.
Yeah, just a beautiful map.
Ich glaube, die nennen es eine Overwatch 2 PvP, aber es gibt kein Overwatch 1 mehr.
We've been wanting to. There's a lot of people on the team from New York who have spent some part of their life there.
Was soll ich damit Overwatch 1, die PvP-Version von Overwatch 2? Es macht ja anders keinen Sinn, weil sonst macht der Crossplay keinen Sinn zwischen den Spielen. Es geht ja nicht. Also hast du auch in Overwatch 1 praktisch keinen Tank mehr, nur einen Tank.
Yeah, this will be our first real look at 5v5.
Ich glaube, auch wenn es ein Sequel ist, ich glaube, Overwatch 1 wird es nicht mehr geben. Es ist ein 100% Sequel, es heißt Overwatch 2 und das war's. Und du startest Overwatch und hast Overwatch 2. Ich glaube, es gibt kein Overwatch 1 mehr. Das macht sonst alles keinen Sinn.
When you have, that one less tank in the equation, you can actually make the tanks more aggressive and more offensive. But it's also just kind of easier for the viewer and just people at home to track.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll see probably a lot of play here. One of the biggest things you'll notice is there's less protection coming from tank players just to directly block.
Wieso verwirren ihre Community so?
Typically we'll find a lot more play around the map corners, map angles.
Das ist das Einzige, was Sinn macht.
People going for cheeky flanks and stuff. Yeah, Dion loves this.
Es muss aber eine klare Kommunikation her. Was passiert mit Overwatch? Was passiert mit Overwatch 1? Das muss mal her. Was passiert damit? Was passiert mit Overwatch 1? Wird's weggeschmissen und du machst Overwatch 2 und Overwatch 2 ist Free-to-Play und gut ist?
Problems in front of you and like, okay, we can fix those. Like, I think we can address
sonst alles keinen Sinn.
Some of the tank imbalances and healing issues and all kinds of other stuff. But at the heart of this, which is really cool, and so that's really what we've been focusing on and working through these problems.
I think something that's really interesting about that too is the gameplay is more fluid than it was before.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times in Overwatch you get these really hard battle lines that get drawn between the two teams, and there's just less damage incoming, and so you're able to kind of move around a little bit more, and you'll see it here a lot of times. The chokes aren't as hard of a space to get through. There's still a choke in the map and you still have to work at it, but there can be a lot more like pushing through and pulling back on the choke, and it's something that I'm like personally really excited about.
Yeah, I was going to say, how has the 5v5 move affected map design? I feel like it kind of has to have a huge impact on what you guys are able to do, create different, speaking about like players being able to take more control of the game, right? creating more flanking routes, more opportunity for, the Ashe to go to the side, get a pick, and open things up for a team.
Yeah, there's a lot more opportunity for players to do that. But at the same time, when you go for a flank,
Das fuckt mich
you're
so,
not
dass nicht
leaving
einfach
5
ordentlich
players
kommunizieren, was in
behind, you're
Overwatch
leaving
1
4
passiert.
players behind.
Ja,
And
das
so
stört mich auch ein
you
bisschen,
kinda
weil
have
das
to be
ist...
weighing some of these decisions in
Dieses
your head.
Hin und
The
Her
game is
alles
just as
verwirrt
strategic
komplett.
as it was before, if not more so because of the individual ability for players to have such a large impact on the match. I think for map design, we've always
Die Waffe von Winston woanders, oder?
really careful to make spaces that feel good just for one hero. And sometimes we might favor particular heroes in different areas, but because of that, because we're able to make space that kind of feels good for
Aber
Reaper,
wie machen
space
denn die
that feels
anderen
good
Tanks
for
noch
Pharah,
Sinn? Also was
I
machst du
think
denn mit einer Zarya zum
we'll still be
Beispiel
able to
dann?
play 5v5 on
Zarya
all
alleine,
of the
Diva alleine.
original
Diva geht
catalog
vielleicht
of
noch.
Overwatch maps as well.
Right.
That is a awesome payload, Dion, by the way.
And
Aber das
we've
irgendwie...
always, in the artwork of the maps, we've always placed what we consider cover objects. It just feels now with the 5v5, players will take advantage of that more. Even the previous maps, we planned cover objects to help protect players. Now with 5v5, they're even more effective. These artistic choices.
It's such a great point too, because we have started placing a little bit more cover in our maps. And if you go back to some of the old maps, like if you look at King's Row, that middle section, that street section of King's Row, there's one piece of cover in that entire
Ja gut, da spielst halt Reinhardt. Aber wenn er ein beschissenes Schild hat, ist Reinhardt halt sinnlos. Weil wenn Echo kommt mit ihren Bubbles, killst du halt das Schild weg. Also wisst ihr, was ich meine? Also Reinhardt ist halt aus meiner Sicht der absolute Verlierer davon. Guck mal sein Schild an. Der hat 1100 Schild vielleicht. Und schau, wie schnell sein Schild weg ist. Es ist Reinhardt halt komplett nutzlos.
I noticed something before Jeff.
Also wisst ihr, was ich meine?
With Winston. My Winston on live,
was macht er denn dann? Rennt er den Leuten hinterher mit seinem Hammer und versucht sie zu verprügeln. Wenn du keine Sorry hast für den Engage, hast du halt ein Problem.
So we were first watching Winston there. This is an example of some of the tank changes we're talking about in regards to 5v5, but also a larger change we're talking about making tanks a lot more aggressive, be able to be a little more hybridy on the damage side and less just raw protection. So on Winston's side, he's ulting right now, unfortunately. You can't see it.
Willst du aggressiv spielen? Als
Als
Reinhardt explodierst du halt in der Frontline.
Right now, there it is. You can charge up like a condensed blast of lightning from his gun and fire it off as a single sort of like blast attack at longer range.
Also wisst ihr, was ich meine?
And so he actually, the charge up is kind of interesting with it for him because you could do it while you're leaping, and so there's like
Da, guck mal, der Reinhardt. Guck mal, sein Leben geht halt einfach runter, weil halt nutzlos ist.
And then you get the stomp damage too, and you can shock him or do quick melee combo. There's a lot more interesting things. On top of the fact that, with some players know a lot of times you shock somebody, they're getting away, you think you can finish them, and they just fair boost away, or somebody just barely gets away. You get that extra alternate fire shot to try to take him out on the way, and it's actually interesting playing against him now because you now are cognizant of that. So sometimes you're leaving a little earlier, like, well, I'm gonna get blasted probably if I just like run away. So I have to be able to survive that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the decisions all Winston players face. It's like, okay, I've jumped on this player, I've gotten them weak. I can either now get out of my bubble and try to finish them off, or just kind of hope a teammate does. But now giving him, I think it kind of goes back to more like that player, agency that you were talking about, being able to kind of take over the game, being able to finish it off. This the nano boosted Ryan. This will never get old. Just seeing Reinhardt nano boosted, just swinging. I'm sure it makes the fans out there happy.
Ja klar, und wird halt komplett dominiert, der Reinhardt.
Dragon Blade, ulting Genji, he was able to take out is it's kind of the bane of existence of a lot of people. But this
Ich bin nicht überzeugt, ehrlich gesagt. Ich bin nicht überzeugt.
Grand Central Station.
Ich bin in keinster Weise überzeugt, weil das zeigt mir gerade, Reinhardt wird einfach gelöscht aus dem Spiel, weil er keine Chance hat.
And you can see the payload is driven by an Omnic, who is a little Easter egg to our production director on the team. Our executive producer.
So he got a name.
Yes, Chaco.
He's gonna be a fan favorite. Oh, he's even got it on the back. I didn't realize. I thought it was like an unofficial name. Like, oh yeah, it's Chaco. No, he's got the suit.
our executive producer, so he's helped us out a lot, and it was only fitting. He has that we.
He's lived in New
Ich
York
finde der
as well.
Beamstrahl ist
He-
schöner,
he
das sieht
helped
ein
out a
bisschen
lot
besser
on
aus,
this
den
map.
sieht man besser jetzt.
And we have countless debates about the right type of pizza with him as well.
Yes, right.
Oh Wunder, Reinhards Schild ist kaputt, der muss zurückweichen, weil sein Schild bricht. Ja, ach, was komisch.
Pizza. I believe it's the
Der ist
water.
ultra, guck mal, der Reinhard, der ist ultra aggressiv.
For a different stream.
Braucht eine Ulti, dass er am Leben bleibt. Weil sonst
my
verrenkt
thoughts
er halt
on the
einfach.
water in New York creating the better pizza dough. You also notice, at least I notice, the new sounds, especially when like Ash
yeah.
shoots. That is
Die Sounds
something
finde ich
that,
gut, ja.
You know, it was discussed at BlizzCon Line, but I think
Oh
it's
Wunder,
different
der
to kind
Reinhard
of see it
stirbt.
in
Mensch,
action
wer hätte
and
das
also
gedacht?
to see all of the other players at the same time with those audio changes. It just makes the game feel even more realistic.
Yeah, the sounds can get really punchy, and it just feels good to hold the trigger down with these different heroes. But you also get more information from it. So we've spent a lot of time not just developing what these sounds are, but how they play in different environments. So we've kind of upgraded the entire sound system across the game. So let's say when that Ash is in a side room firing from that room, you really kind of understand where they're at and what type of environment that they're in better than you did before. And then you can kind of take that information and make different decisions or additional decisions because of it.
All right, so we got a map complete from the offense here. Not bad. Not bad.
Der
in that
wundert mich
first
nicht.
go.
Die
The-
Defense
the
hat einen Reinhardt
players
gehabt,
are
das
so
kann nur
competitive. I
schief
have to say this to the stream. That we were like, yeah, this is
Sorry,
fun,
wenn das
like,
mega
everybody
salty
having
ist, aber
fun,
das
and then
kann nur
everybody's like,
schief
put your
gehen.
SR in the chat. We're gonna make balanced teams. Like, who's playing what? It's just I feel like it's just the nature of Overwatch, right? Like it always starts off, yeah, let's play for fun, and then you lose a game, and you're like, all right.
Also würde mich immer interessieren, was ihr
Everybody pick
denkt.
it up. Like, let's,
Würde mich
let's
echt mal
change things.
interessieren.
It's like that meme when you're playing, relaxing your chair, and then you lose, and you lean forward, get a little more, get the
Yeah.
game winning posture.
It's those nights of ranked where you lose like 2 and you're like you win 1 and then you're like, all right, play to lose, and then you lose a few more, and then the next thing you know, you wake up and you're like, well, why'd I do that? Like 500 SR down the drain. That's
Yeah.
So this will be an opportunity to see like Roadhog has a solo tank coming in for the offensive side here. I feel like he's just gonna be even on live, right? He just takes up so much space, Jeff. Like, and he takes up space. Not
Also ich
just his shield,
prophezeie was.
just his body, as I say
Ich
that,
prophezeie, dass dem
Zarya
Reinhardt sein
swap,
Schild
but,
keine 2 Sekunden beim
talk to me a little
Engagement
bit about, like, the thoughts and,
standhält.
how like the Roadhogs of the world, Divas, even Zarya.
Ah,
I know
er
there's
spielt
some
kein
interesting
Roadhog.
stuff with Zarya.
Wahrscheinlich genau aus dem Grund, weil sonst haben
Yeah, so
Sinn
like,
dran
this is
gesagt
a
im
lot of this
Office,
is a work in
spiel
progress
kein
for
Roadhog, das
sure.
zeigt, wie schlecht
For
Reinhardt
hero
ist.
by hero. But like because
Immer gegen
once we started
Echo.
going to one tank, it was
Sein
sort of
Schild
the
ist halt weg.
question was like,
Der hat halt Reinhardt hat kein Schild mehr.
What direction are we pushing tanks now? We going? We're trying to make Roadhog, a lot more static defensively and have, big barriers or something to protect his team, or do we want more the opposite? We're like,
Oh, guck mal, sein Schild ist fast kaputt, ja. Oh toll, geil. Ja, Reinhardt muss zurückweichen. Was für ein Wunder. Oh, guck mal, sein Schild ist fast kaputt. Guck mal, sein Schild ist fast kaputt. Sein Schild ist kaputt. Oh, was für ein Wunder. Oh, Reinhardt wurde gelöscht aus dem Spiel.
Not only is it just more fun to have that kind of extra speed and aggression, but a lot
Alter.
of what people had a lot of comments on in the past when the metas get too full of barriers and shields, and honestly, even
Das
sometimes
kann
when
doch
there's just,
keiner von denen gespielt haben und gesagt haben, yo, wir löschen einfach den zweiten Tank und Reinhardt lassen wir einfach komplett nutzlos zurück.
Wisst ihr,
was ich mein?
Some of the balance changes we made in the past in the live game have been trying to address this, but once we got into this situation, we're like, this is sort of an opportunity.
Ja, guck mal, sein Schild.
To reduce
Sein Schild ist halt einfach weg.
And we still want them to be there and present.
Was machst du denn als Reinhardt? Kannst du einen Hammer schwingen? Hurra!
They still have a decent amount of health, but less than they had before.
Da bringt dir auch Shield-Management
in
nichts.
response to that, we can see Reinhardt here. He
Ja.
hit the wall right there. He didn't cancel it.
Er ist
You
halt
can
einfach
cancel
weg.
your charge, and you can get two fire strikes. So the canceling charge is one of those like sneaky things that seems like to some people might be kind of a minor change, but it almost like completely changes how he plays a lot of ways. It's actually really fun because you can it has a really fast recovery when you cancel, So you can like
Klar,
charge up to a group
weil
and
du
then
brauchst
cancel
2
and move
Fire
the ult,
Strikes,
just, like, knock
weil sonst
everyone
bist du
down.
komplett
So
nutzlos in diesem
the fact
Spiel.
that you can even do that is its own now like
Schau mal sein
sort of
Schild an.
minigame that people play where you can kind of bluff with it. If people know you have your ult, if you think you have your ult, you can
Und jetzt hast
charge
du
right
keinen
at them
zweiten
and then
Tank
try
mit,
not
der
to
dich
get
mal
stunned. Like, they don't
bubbelt.
wanna fight you necessarily. Like,
Oder der Damage
because
von
they
dir
don't wanna get
weghält.
earth-shattered. So sometimes you can like bluff people and are running for cover and you didn't even have it, or you save it or something. So, and it also just allows him to, you know, get in there and be more aggressive without sacrificing his health bar.
Yeah, it just sounds like another change, almost like how you kind of mentioned like stuff like that Winston combo, kind of, you know, as you're playing and testing and seeing all these different things. Like, yeah, where the Winston combo, you can, you know, load up that secondary fire, come to, like, get the jump damage, land on somebody,
Also,
take them
was ich
out.
bisschen
like,
mitnehme
now you kind of have, like, this, like,
von diesem
little
Gameplay
metagame
ist,
with, like, Reinhardt
wenn du
play, right,
Reinhardt
where, you know,
spielst
you kind of have,
und hast
like,
in
this
deinem
another layer
Team
of
jemand, der
canceling
Reinhardt
charge,
spielt,
you know, being able to-
schreib in Chat,
I remember
GG,
there's
good
one
luck
clip, I
next.
think, from, BlizzCon.
Das ist das,
It's
was
just,
ich
like,
hier
trailer
gerade
where
mitnehme.
he charges towards the team, cancels, and then shatters them all. Being able to make plays like that just seems so sick.
He's also
Das
got
ist
the
das, was ich
ability
gerade mitnehme.
to control his charge more, so you can actually turn
right.
around corners more.
Oh, yeah.
So the charge, while you can cancel it,
Ich finde das Waffenfeuer von Widow geil.
more versatile.
Das hört sich gut an,
I
die
think something
Knarre.
else that's really interesting, if you look at if people have noticed what's happening with Zarya, is she has 2 charges to her bubble now.
But they share charges. Is the trick. It's actually what we playtested in the April Fool's patch.
Er hat mal kurz nach
as
Farah
people probably
gewunken,
noted,
dass er runterkommt, dass er mit Hammer
you know,
geprügelt wird.
some of those changes were, a lot of them were just silly, kind of fun, like permanently flying Sigma. But you know, there were some changes we threw in there. I was like, let's see how people react to this. I'm curious what people think. Like maybe this is something we can try. And the Zarya bubbles is one of those things. So
Aaron, you know,
it's something
I was,
we just recently kind of
Reinhardt
put in.
main, right?
Oh yeah.
It took me a while to get used to the new changes, but once I really dug in and settled with these changes, I realized it's how I always wanted to play Reinhardt this way, basically.
Yeah.
You know, the charge in and
Yeah, we were
smash
joking about that
everything.
the other day, where I'm like, yeah, like the canceling the charge just feels so right that
Yeah.
but you're so like trained to kind of how it is, like where you're just charging into walls.
Will kein Fight People
that I
Games
was like,
haben.
wait, I was like, I don't have to do this anymore.
No.
Like I can just go. Like it's such like a great quality of life change.
Klar.
Yeah, something
That's
else I
also
think
super.
that's really
Es ist
interesting.
schön, dass
here
sie
is
Reinhardt
like, this
angepasst
fight's
haben, aber du
been
musst
going
ihn
on for a
anpassen, weil
while.
er ist
Neither
komplett
tank has
nutzlos.
fallen. And the
yeah.
support have been doing such a good job at keeping the tanks up, because there's only one of them that they have to actually focus on, and the fights feel really,
Wenn ich mit meinen
really
Freunden
good
spiele, sind wir immer
being
6
the
Leute.
tank player now. Like the amount
Ja,
of
jetzt
times
bist du
you get
5.
into this situation where it feels hopeless. You're low on health. There's a bunch of the enemy players focusing on you, and you're able to still come out of it. It feels
Fuck this
so
game, I guess.
incredibly good, and you feel
Ja,
really
keine Ahnung.
powerful.
Yeah, it's I think that has to be something that you guys have kind of gotten in feedback, that from a support's point of view, you're able to
Du
dump
bist halt, wenn du
resources
Tank jetzt
into
spielst,
just one tank, and that
bist
also
du der
probably frees you up to
absolute
do
Versager.
a little bit of other stuff,
Weil du hast
right?
halt
Where
keine
the T's can do a
Chance
little bit
mehr
more damage.
wirklich.
You know, as Zen, you can kind of orb the tank and then focus on the damage. That probably has to be way easier in supports now.
For sure. Yeah, we got a lot of feedback from support players.
Weiß ich
it's a lot
nicht. Ich
easier to
finde
focus.
das.
And a lot of times you almost have this like communication between the two support players, and you know you have like Mercy's like, I'm just gonna be, you know, on tank duty and just be on tank basically the whole time, and you have like a Lucio or something like that.
Das haben wir doch nur so gemacht, weil es ein Problem ist, 2 Tanks zu kriegen in Overwatch 1. 100%.
Sometimes we've seen people go 2 big heal, you know, main healers essentially, and try to just focus so hard on their tank.
Ja, das
they
kann
even
durchaus
put
sein.
Discord on them, it's
Das
just
kann
hard to kill
durchaus
them.
sein, dass das der Grund war.
So that's going to be an interesting strat too. So
Ich weiß nicht, ob ich die Änderung gut finde oder nicht, aber ich glaube einfach, du hast gewisse Tanks, die komplett nutzlos sind.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun.
This Zen UI is new.
Oh yeah.
It actually looks really cool.
Weil was machst du mit den ganzen
this is something
Off-Tanks?
obviously that's incredibly
Also
new, I think,
Zarya,
online, that's kind of
Diva.
displayed on the right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're
there's
generally looking through this.
Du bist halt als
Go
Diva
ahead,
einfach,
sorry.
du hast halt nichts mehr,
Also,
in dem du dich
we're generally
verstecken
looking at
kannst dann,
anywhere we can
sondern du wirst halt als Diva einfach wegradiert. Als
hero-specific
Reinhardt
UI
wirst du
stuff like this,
wegradiert,
and we felt like this could
als
use
Winston bist
a
du
big
jetzt
update, and
schon der
we all know
Loser, weil wenn du reindash,
Yeah, I think one of the
lächel
things
dich
I'm
ein
most
Reaper an und
excited
sagt,
about with the
hallo,
healer UI
und dann bist du halt tot.
is it's not just on Zen.
Also
but
wisst ihr,
it's
was
on
ich meine?
Mercy
Das ist
also.
so-
You see the portrait of the player that you're healing. And so it's just a lot easier to kind of figure out who you've got.
Und dann hast
instead
du
of
halt
just
Roadhog.
using something like a nameplate.
Machst halt ein 3 DPS Game
and it's
draus.
not off to the side, right? It's like center screen.
Ballerst
so
einfach
you're able to
Damage
still
rein
focus
ohne
down the
Ende.
middle.
Yeah, and you can see his Discord is down there as well. So you have like Harmony and Discord orbs are kind of
Stell dir mal vor,
shown on
Team
each
Com?
side of the ult at the bottom of the screen.
Reaper, Roadhog,
We have an
Echo,
overtime here. I can imagine the comms are.
Bab,
Everybody's starting to get pretty
Zenyatta.
sweaty now.
Und dann spielen den Reinhardt
we get
dagegen.
towards the end of the map.
Kannst dein Schild doch gleich drunten lassen. Weil du hast kein Schild mehr am Ende.
I gotta say for you guys probably.
Wisst ihr, was ich mein?
This is probably awesome to see, like the game actually being.
Dein Schild ist in einer Sekunde weg.
Now to like observe and be able to watch and
Und du hast
obviously,
keine
the people you guys
Möglichkeit
work
mehr,
with
dass
every
eine
day,
Zarya
that's
dir eine
pretty
Bubble
awesome.
gibt dann am Ende, dass du sagen kannst.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Ähm,
We've been playing it in this state for a long time too, and
du
it's
lässt
always
den Reinhardt am Leben.
it's always so tough
Zum Beispiel. Oder eine Diva, die einem Winston zu Hilfe kommt.
at work and then go home and it operates in a totally different way and you're
Oder
playing
Double
with people
Bubble, sowas in die
online,
Richtung.
and you can't help but think like if only you knew
Right.
what I was playing, you know, every
Right.
day. And so it feels really good to have that out in front of our community so they can kind of see what we've been doing.
There's actually a ton of like small changes in here too. Like I'm curious if people picked up on it after one game. Like one example of a small change that actually we may end up removing, but it's in this build right now, is because we've had it for a while now, but we just had reduced discussion. Maybe we want to pull it again. Is we've actually slowed the movement acceleration rate of everybody in the game just very slightly. And the reason for that was to try to create a little more sort of prediction element to shooting an enemy, as opposed to like you can kind of AD spam a lot of times, or just like turn directions so fast that it was really hard to lead a shot, or sometimes it felt like you're guessing a little bit on which direction they're going to go. So we tried to like just notch it down just a little bit, so you can't really feel it as much in first person, but it's kind of one of the subtle things. But after sitting with her for a while, even just like I think it was like last week or earlier this week, we started bringing up a thread again. Like, do we want to keep this? Actually, this has been around for a while. Is everyone still happy with this? So that's just an example of like the
controversial.
core.
Like among the design team, there's a lot of back and forth on this one. So, but I think whether or not we keep a change like that in the game, I think what it speaks to is the amount of systems and how deep we're looking at like the entire experience of PvP in the game.
Yeah, it seems like no stone on PvP is being left like untouched, right? Where you're able to kind of look under kind of every rock, see what you guys want to do. I want to bring somebody in from the community real quick. I can welcome in Stylosa. Dude, what'd you think? First looks, what'd you think, man?
I'll be honest, I was a little bit skeptical when I first heard about 5v5. Ripped to the off tanks kind of thing, but I don't know. Based off watching that first map there on New York, I don't know. It looks quite spicy. This does. Could be quite good.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Like as somebody who I will wait in the DPS queue. As long as I gotta wait. But now like seeing the tanks and seeing how aggressive you can play and push the pace. I'm excited to be able to kind of now dive into the tank role, and also when I'm support, to throw a few heals on my tank, then start pumping out some damage.
Yeah, I mean, well, super buff tanks, you're just gonna go in, right? This is it's always been the dumb thing when you're playing Reinhardt.
Habe ich gerade das falsche Gameplay gesehen?
Most of the time, but now it's like, yeah, just go in.
Now
habe ich gerade das falsche Gameplay gesehen?
I'm
Sind die Tanks nicht sofort gelöscht worden aus dem
We
Spiel?
can bring Aaron and Jeff back in. As our next map's going to be a game mode
meine
that
nur.
we saw at BlizzCon,
Habe ich ein anderes Gameplay gesehen?
BlizzCon in 2018. It seems
Oder
like
interpretiere ich es
forever
falsch?
ago, is a push. How has the game mode changed since we last saw it?
We haven't made a lot of changes to the mode itself, at least as far as like the big rules go for it, but we've continued developing for it. So we have more than one push map in development, and I think we have more than one that we'll even be looking at today. So we're really committed to the mode, and we have a lot of fun playing this thing. I think the interesting thing about push to me is from the outside, it sort of looks like it's a riff on payload, but there's something about having this robot move back and forth in the map that makes this very special. I almost think of push more as a moving control point, or a match of control more than a match of payload. And you'll kind of see it. The mode can be really flanky. So there's a lot of other heroes in here that I think can get play in push, and a lot of that has to do with just the bi-directional nature of that robot in the map, and also because of how quickly it moves.
Yeah, and if you've never seen push before, there's a robot in the middle. Both teams will come out and kind of fight for it, and then once you get control, you can start pushing your barricade towards the opponent's spawn. It's the name push, guys. Stylosa, you played it.
Yeah, no,
at BlizzCon. How'd you find it then?
I mean, it seems like such a long time ago when I played this at BlizzCon. Yeah, it was pretty hectic. I mean, I will say though, the teams were horrendously unbalanced at BlizzCon, and I mean, I think I had like Siegel, XQC, Fran, and me were playing against random people. It was a massacre.
That's cruel.
I'll be honest, I was just AFK. It didn't really matter. But yeah, it was. I can't wait to see it. I just, hey, any Overwatch 2 news, give it me. I'll consume that stuff. Just give it me.
How do you guys think it feels now in 5v5? Because the last time we saw push at BlizzCon, the PvP was 6-on-6. Does it play any different, you guys feel, especially on Toronto?
A little bit. So push has always been maybe our most hectic mode, or our most dynamic game mode. And part of the reason for that is the way these maps are designed is we have a very sort of like wavy path that the robot travels on. So the objective is kind of always moving back and forth. And then we have a lot of very direct routes across the map that the players can take. And because of that, it allows players to take a lot of shortcuts, circle around the enemy team, and it creates a lot of these flanking opportunities. With 5 players, there's just one less person you kind of have to kind of keep in your mind's focus, and kind of like worrying about where they're going to show up at any time. And so it's settled down a little bit. I still think it has that dynamic nature that we've always loved about push. It's just a little bit easier.
Das Argument, du hast einen Spieler weniger, um den du dich kümmern, oder 2 Spieler weniger, um die du dich kümmern musst.
That's kind of the way I
lass dich dazu wirklich gelten.
A lot of the buildings you can go through, different types of routes you can take. I'm excited. Let's jump into map number 2. This will be Toronto. This will be push. This is the map that we actually saw back at BlizzCon. We all had a chance to play. It was awesome then. I'm excited to see some of the flanking characters. You can kind of get like an overhead view of the map now and see your tracers, your Genjis on this type of map.
Reaper is the one to watch for, I think.
Has Reaper been tearing it up?
Yeah. Really,
so is this map the same as it was back at BlizzCon? Or has there been any alterations to it?
It's virtually the same.
Yeah.
When we had the map at BlizzCon, it was definitely a work in progress, and it's still a work in progress now, but we've had the opportunity to add additional polish and art resources into the map since then.
All the maps just look so good. I know I see Stylosa's face when we do the fly through, and he's just like smiling. He's just like so giddy, like it's so fun. Where I feel like push is gonna add a different type of element to the game that like. Escort in hybrid, like you mentioned, are like the payload oriented maps, and I think push kind of plays like that a little bit, but there's so much more movement, I feel like, than both of those, and just you take so many different fights all over the map. And I also love the fact that you just can't really tie on this map. I think one of the things like about Assault is that you
glaube, was auch ein Punkt ist, die wissen nicht, wie sie mit Double Barrier und sowas umgehen sollen.
I mean, maybe even being
Drum schmeißen sie den zweiten Tank raus.
But like, this you definitely get a winner.
Yeah,
also ich glaube, ein Punkt ist, was Koporo gesagt hat, dass nicht genug Tankspieler da sind. Und zum anderen, die wissen nicht, wie sie 2 Tanks balancen sollen.
And it was really
Die haben
hard for us
keine
to do
Ahnung.
that with 2CP. You can have incredibly long matches in 2CP and sometimes like really quick blowouts. And it just came down to what the 2 teams were doing, and the game mode itself wasn't really doing anything to
Man muss es
enforce
mal
that
anders
the way
sehen.
it might in
Als Spieler
control
musst
or
du dich
in
um
payload.
2
And so
Spieler
with
weniger
push,
kümmern.
we
Als
have more of
Blizzard
that, to where the game mode is
musst du
actually-
nicht mehr
is actually
versuchen, um 2
helping to
Tanks
control the
rumzubalancen,
length
wenn
of
die
the
meinen, du
match,
spielst
and the pace of the
Reinhard
match.
Orisa. Oder Reinhard
it's,
Sigma.
you
Du hast
see on
kein
the clock,
Double
it's
Shield
a
mehr.
8-minute clock right now. So yeah, it is pretty fast. I think it's definitely intended with, you know, some.
Ich glaube, das ist einer der
poor
zweite
looping.
Hintergrund.
It's
Kopuros
taken
Puck ist
out
ganz
right
gut,
on-
aber ich glaube
right
der
on
auch.
the
Die haben
rip.
keine
What
Ahnung, wie
was
sie es
going on
balancen
with
sollen.
those flags didn't turn out so well. So does the bot unlock right away?
It takes about 30 seconds for it to unlock, and the reason we do that is we don't want a team to think that there's a certain amount of pressure, or to have all this pressure to get to it as quickly as possible. We want you to be able to be strategic with the way that you
Ich meine, der Punkt ist, das Spiel ist halt auch deutlich schneller dann,
It's very similar to the way
weil
that
die
control
Teamfights
works.
deutlich kürzer sind.
So we can see the robot. He's got a name, right?
Yeah, his name is TWO.
That's good. We see some Genji play in action. Yeah, you see like all the buildings you can kind of come from. Players, you know, up above to the side. I think you can definitely see that, like, you know, fast paced.
Und Lamp ist immer noch
It looks
fantastisch.
you know, way more like you can, as a DPS player, just kind of go off to the side, make a play, try and make a. You see here they're going right for the supports.
Yep. Yeah, and the map, there's still a main path in push,
Yeah.
and it's really important for us to have that in all of our map types. But there are a lot of ways to get around that and to get through it, and that's what creates a lot of these opportunities.
He went for the remake kill. Can't blame him.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching this. Yeah, I'm here. I'm fixated on the gameplay. I think, I mean, this looks really deathmatchy. This does. Like, we're just, you know, they're just going in, they're having a good old brawl, and then obviously as the mech or the point is moving through the map, it's changing up every single time, and it's just. To be honest, it looks fairly similar to what I played back at BlizzCon all those years ago. Just with one less tank. It's still
it's just
yeah,
but it's just more space, I think, to operate.
Yeah.
Like I'm somebody who I play a ton of DPS, like, and I'm excited that maybe not everybody will run around in like a death ball, and I'll be able to kind of like play Tracer and go off to the side and make a play. I noticed too the green health over Lucio here.
Oh yeah.
What is that on the UI now?
I actually completely forgot about that. There's so many changes.
I was like, sound barrier doesn't give green health when I do it.
Right. So that's something we're changing up. You know, like everything's work in progress. It's possible to change, although we're pretty happy with it right now. This is a change to what we kind of call overhealth. This is like a larger system, which is, you know, in Overwatch 1 you can have over armor and over shields, depending on who's giving it to you, much like you can have normal health and shields and armor. So, you know, once we started getting into trying to create clarity and make sure, you know, the game's very readable in all these senses, you know, like you mentioned with Zenyatta's UI and everything, that came up too, is like, you know, it's possible to get, especially you get into like PvE talents and stuff like that, your health bar can get really colorful really fast. Like, you could have, you know, health and then armor and then shields and then over health, armor and shields, and you could literally have 6 segmented colored health, and it was like, I can't even understand what I'm looking at right now. This is like so insane. So we ended up condensing all of the over health concepts into just one concept now, and so, you know, it was kind of interesting. Other than Summer's EMP, over shields was more of a thematic thing than anything, because it didn't regen like normal shields, because it's over health doesn't have a regeneration value. So it was kind of nonsense anyway, honestly. So now we kind of have everything condensed into green health, and it's very understandable that, you know, you see somebody with green and you can see like, okay, that's not, you know, that's over healthy, it's either going to drain, or if I shoot through it, they can't be healed and stuff like that. So it kind of helps clarify all that.
Port 2's getting a workout going back and forth, but I noticed before there was like a circle. So is there like kind of capture points, like progress? Does that change the respawns at all? How does that work on push?
Yeah, it does. So the robot starts in the middle of the map, and it pushes those those red barricades in front of it, and you can use those to kind of like in world see what your high watermark is. And if the robot's able to push it to the checkpoint, it will unlock a forward spawn room for the team that was able to do it. You can kind of see it just off to the left here behind Reinhardt. So if the attacking team can push it over there, they'll unlock that spawn point, and it gives them a big advantage in order to kind of push through the rest of the map.
And then I assume when they're when 2 starts moving the other direction, I guess Hepis decides to start moving the other direction, they would lose that forward spawn, right?
Yeah, but there is Yep, there is an additional detail there. It's TWO has to be pushed back to the middle of the map before you lose your forward spawn room. And we actually started it the way that you described it, but a lot of times the robot could just move back and forth across this one checkpoint, and it got like really chaotic, and you'd have no idea where you were going to spawn. So we kind of gave you a grace period in there, or made it a little bit stickier by forcing him to return to the middle.
Yeah, that's a good call. I can imagine
glaub, der Game Mode
if
ist ganz
that was
witzig.
the case now. Yeah, you would have, like, if I spawned this 1 second, I would spawn close, and then, like, Stylosa spawns the next second, and he's far away.
Yep. And I mean, that happens in Overwatch, you know, but it was way too blatant.
This
with
double
that.
bubble Zarya is sick.
She is incredible. I love her.
It's actually a pretty
Yeah.
recent
Is
thing
it-
we checked it in, but it's pretty new.
Is her damage ramped up when she's charged? Like more so.
Yeah, I
well,
mean, yeah,
guess-
it's
yeah.
so you have the same bubbles you had before, but they're both using shared charges. So yeah, we found that because this increased flexibility in how you use it, she tends to be at higher charge more often.
Die Änderung finde ich ganz geil.
I mean, this is a good example, I guess.
Aber du kannst dann 2 Leute zum Beispiel eine Bubble geben dann,
So it's actually even a lot of playtests.
wenn Sinn ist,
I
wenn
can
du es
find
für dich
myself,
selber
like,
nicht brauchst.
You know, sending a message to people. What was your average?
Das finde ich eine ganz gute Änderung für Zarya.
It's like, that's, you're kind of tearing it up. That seems a little insane. So, balancing TBD, but
It looks so fun, though. I mean, as somebody who loves to play Zarya, like, I also can imagine the people that I would play with on Zarya would just automatically double bubble themselves and everybody
That was our
else
first instinct, actually,
fend for
was
themselves.
like,
Yeah.
let's just run in and double bubble ourselves. But then you start to think, like, actually, if I save 2 and, you know, Genji pulls out his blade
Aber
on
ich
my
finde
team,
nicht,
I think if I double shield him and we, you know, I
dass
save
du,
that
weil du
up,
ein
that's
Tank
gonna be
bist,
kind of
viel,
ridiculous. So,
viel
yeah.
I didn't even think of
aggressiver
that.
spielen
Like,
kannst.
yeah, not just applying the 2 bubbles to yourself, but you could, because they share the
Weil
charge,
sie entweder
you
Leben
could
noch
theoretically,
Schilde
like,
aktualisiert
bubble
oder
Genji
die
blade and
Rüstung
then
besser
bubble
gesagt.
them again, right?
Yeah.
Das heißt, du stirbst halt einfach
Oh,
schneller.
Works really well.
So,
So this
many.
is-
Aber vielleicht
so
ist
many
es ja auch so
different
gewollt.
ways.
Yeah, so this is like, as it just kind of recently put in, coming off the back
Meine
of
ich zumindest.
April 1st stuff. And
Mit meinem gefährlichen
seeing how we
Halbwissen.
feel about it, and it's been pretty interesting. I'm certainly concerned about it in some cases, but it also leads to some really awesome play. So, kind of letting it rock for a while and see how it feels.
Work in progress, but
Yep.
I like the progress on that one design. so OT, how does the rule here work? I guess do they have to push all the way to the end, or do they just have to beat the time of the blue team?
They just need to beat the time of the blue team. So the win condition for push is whoever has pushed it the furthest by the end of time wins, or if you're able to push it all the way to the end of the map, you'll win instantly. So now they're unlocking their forward spawn room right here.
Oh, the tragedy strikes for the blue team. Yeah, they need to stay near the robot, I believe, to keep pushing.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Wenn sie das machen, müssen wir auch den Schaden hochschrauben, weil die können den Tanks einen huge amount of
the
HP
good
und
old
Shield
blunder
geben,
where
ohne was
everybody
am
walks
Schaden
off the
zu machen.
objective and
Es muss halt so
Two
eine
just looks
Balance
sad.
geben, finde ich.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Also ich sehe halt so ein bisschen, du hast halt...
Oh, that's a problem.
Ich sehe halt die Gefahr, du hast halt Tanks,
Yeah, I
die werden
imagine
eine
these games go
deutlich
right
höhere
down to the
Pickrate
wire.
haben als andere.
I mean,
Just as we
it's
saw there.
definitely
Weil wenn du
hectic
Damage
versus Warfare.
reinpumpen
This is
kannst
gonna
in das
be quite good
feindliche
for
Team.
Overwatch League, I'd imagine. This is.
Warum sollst du zum
I
Beispiel Reinhardt
I really
spielen?
enjoyed watching that.
Weil
Yeah,
Reinhardt
I
kann
think,
halt nix, sein Hammer schwingen, hat 2 Fire Strikes.
Yeah, when you think about
kann
like,
seinen
you know,
Charge
5v5
canceln.
or 6 on 6, you're
Yay,
like,
aber-
well, like, does it still have that, like, you know, big, like, energy, like that fast-paced, like
Also sie müssten halt Reinhardt vielleicht ein
I think,
bisschen mehr
especially on push. I think it's why it's such like a
hochpumpen.
great
Dass Reinhardt so ein bisschen so ein Standing hat. Weil der kann halt nicht so einfach schnell irgendwo rein und viel Damage machen.
It sort of ramps up, right, as the match goes on. It gets more and more and more intense, and woof, you have a big sort of crescendo towards the end. That's really nice. I really like that.
It's got that Overwatch music where it kind of adds to the
Balance haben die ein bisschen gut hinbekommen.
of it all.
Yeah,
Ich bin
push,
gespannt.
This happens in push a lot. It goes to overtime more often than it doesn't. And it was a decision that we made when we were developing the mode, where we had to decide what was more important for push. Was it for one team to be able to get the robot all the way to the end of the map? Or is it more important for the robot to be moving back and forth in the map? Because it's really hard to get both of those, and so we think that this mode plays better to have it moving back and forth more often. And so the mode mechanics and the map design is all kind of tailored to have that, and it makes it like really exciting.
Yeah, it's just the fast-moving, fast flow of combat, right? I think the kind of Jeff, like in your wheelhouse, right? Like for just hero design and being able to kind of come up with these creative different things that, like we saw Zarya there on push. Like it's not a hero that you would kind of think for like an aggressive type of game mode like that, but she looked unkillable all the time and she looked crazy.
She's really scary in this form for sure, and I think that's kind of what we're thinking for a lot of these sort of off tanky kind of characters before, Roadhog and D.Va. And we saw D.Va there played as well, and D.Va's gotten a lot of changes too. So I think it's worth noting that we're not like taking every tank and just making them super aggro. In some cases, we're pushing some of the more aggro tanks and making them a little tankier. So, I mean, a lot of cases they have a lot more health, as people notice, but D.Va has a lot more sort of matrix juice in the can, so she can use it a lot more. So that's an example of where we didn't just like give her more missiles or something like that and let her go kill everybody. It's like she can actually protect her team a little more. So she slides a little bit closer towards, the defensive route.
Ja gut.
There's probably players out there who want those missiles, but I'm happy.
Brauchst du auch.
I'm happy.
Wenn du einen Tank weniger hast, musst du die anderen Tanks ein bisschen sinnvoller machen.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I am very impressed with that. Much more impressed than I thought I would be. It's been so long since I've seen push in action, and it definitely looks better 5v5. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's I want to see more. I want to see more of this. Like, I feel hard done by just getting one game.
Yeah, Stylos is not going to leave the call. He's just going to plant his stake down and just hang out. But guys, we're going to go for a quick break. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Super's going to join the show, give his thoughts on some of the things he's seen, go over some of the stuff that's going on with the tanks. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Weiß ich nicht. Es kann durchaus sein, dass ich komplett zu 1000% falsch liege und sich das mega gut spielt und es mega gut balanced ist und alles super rauskommt, auch wenn du nur einen Tank hast. Ich habe nur die Befürchtung, dass sich dadurch gewisse Comps manifestieren. Und du dadurch praktisch, und dass einige Helden komplett im Bach runtergehen. Das ist so ein bisschen die Befürchtung. Weil momentan hast du so ein bisschen so einen Mix. Weil jeder Held macht irgendwie auf seine gewisse Weise, macht der Sinn. Aber ja, keine Ahnung. Ich meine, wenn sie als Ziel verfolgen, das muss man ganz klar sagen, wenn sie als Ziel verfolgen, du willst nicht mehr auf Tanks warten, weil plötzlich, keine Ahnung, du hast 500.000 Tankspieler, dann kannst du halt plötzlich mit diesen 500.000 Tank-Spielern kannst du halt 500.000 Games machen und keine 250.000 mehr. Das war Kopurus Punkt. Der ist, glaube ich, legitim. Ich glaube, sie können es einfach nicht, das mit 2 Tanks zu balancen. Und sie wollen es einfach schneller, paciger machen.
For Overwatch 2 PvP. There's a lot to take in, obviously with new maps, new game types, and changes, of course, to some of the core mechanics of the game. So we're going to rehash a couple of things, of course, over the next few maps, but we want to drill down on a couple of the things we've already talked about so far. And to help me do that now, we'll be joining our Overwatch League superstar, Matthew Super Delissi, of course, is everybody's favorite neighborhood main tank. How you doing, Super? Obviously, big news today. I'd love to get some of your initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, first of all. I mean, the tank changes, that's definitely the one that, kind of stuck out to me. The fact that, only one tank, because I'm a tank player, and, my experience with tank, it goes up, it goes down. Sometimes you get bullied as a tank with 2. So I'm curious to see how that's going to progress and change to make it so that it's a lot easier for one tank to be, work properly and not have as many struggles.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I think you watch in any sort of tank player's stream right now. You can sort of see plenty of the ups and also some of the downs here. Obviously, we saw, maybe some more power being shifted in the direction of the tanks, right? We saw Reinhardt with the double fire strikes. He's got some more of that charge control and the Winston changes. What was your thoughts when you first saw the fact that Winston now has a bit of longer range equipment to bring into the fight?
Yeah, I thought that was a little bit interesting. I also like that they grabbed the Zarya from the experimental. I mean, at least in when I played the experimental, I thought that the cooldown needed to be shorter on that. But I like that in general, they're trying to give more power if it's going to be just one tank. Because I feel like otherwise, a lot of tanks like, Zarya and Diva, they would kind of struggle because the way they're designed right now, I feel like they weren't really, made to be played solo, if that makes sense. But now I feel like if they do the proper changes, then I think it could actually be pretty good.
Absolutely. You saw there as well a couple of the changes. We mentioned Winston's mains. We haven't really talked about it. It's definitely part of a wider conversation that we can sort of tap into in a moment. And of course, we'll be rejoined in just a moment by some members of our development team.
Und dann schieben sie doch Mate zum Tank rüber.
Some more of these questions here. We already heard a little bit about.
Weil wir reden gerade über Tanks die ganze Zeit, jetzt ist Mate da. Also es wird Main Tank werden. Overwatch 2.
Jeff Goodman, of course, the lead hero designer on Overwatch 2. And Dion Rogers, our associate art director. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Of course, now you have a bona fide main tank player at the professional level in the room here. And Super, of course, a chance to share some of your thoughts. But, gentlemen, overall, it definitely feels like the role of the tank changes vastly now in this landscape. Not only is it just one tank, but maybe some of the roles or things you're expected to do in the game may have shifted.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, it's sort of like, definitely in the past, it's somewhat true as well that you're definitely leading your team. But I think now you're doing it kind of by yourself, and you can really sort of pace the game out, at least for your team, exactly how you want it to go. Which, so I think some people are sort of, internally, we've had people like kind of worried about that pressure a little bit. Like, oh man, that's a lot of I have a lot of responsibility now. But I think as you start to play it, and you just realize that, wow, I actually have a lot more tools to do this than before, though. I mean, I'm a lot stronger. I can actually survive these encounters a lot more, especially with healers both focusing on me now and everything. So it ends up just kind of being empowering and super fun when you get in there, especially obviously with the ability to cancel Reinhardt charge.
Oder jetzt wird doch kein Tank.
And you can poke a little bit with Winston.
Mit eine Zarya hier drin ist.
So a lot more control.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Earlier I mentioned I used to be a Brian main as well.
Nice.
And these changes. So it took me a while to get used to the changes, but I agree with what Jeff said. There's a lot more choice and tactical decisions you're making as the tank now. That it just feels fun and really good for the team.
I love that you sort of mentioned Reinhardt here as well, because I don't know if something that we maybe haven't covered at great depth so far, but because the role of the tank maybe changes, or maybe it becomes more focused now to some degree. Reinhardt, obviously, we've known him to have a sort of a passive ability on live where he's less affected by some of this crowd control or knockback stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk a bit about role passives, because that's something that is, is coming to Overwatch 2 and really sort of sets some of these roles apart from each other a bit more, Jeff.
Yeah, so this is a new thing coming to Overwatch 2. It's, for those that don't know, it's every role, so tanks, DPS, and support, get a passive or a set of passives related to their role. So in this case, you can see tanks have a couple things associated with them. One is they're reduced, they get knockback reduction on them, so you can't knock them around quite so easily, which thematically makes sense too, but if you're a tank player, you're playing against, Lucio and whoever else, it can be really infuriating sometimes, just be flying around all the time, not be able to control your character as well. So that's one of the things they get. And the other thing they get that we've heard about tanks, especially tanks like Roadhog who don't have a barrier, is people feel like they generate too much ultimate for the enemy team, especially if you're trying to be aggressive, which is what we're trying to incentivize. That you come in, maybe you cancel charge and try to get hammer swings in there to build your ult, but like, was that a worthwhile trade-off if the enemy shot you so much that they built more ult than you did? So what we've done is shooting an enemy tank generates less ult for you, so your enemies get less ult for shooting you across the board for all tanks now. And these are obviously the values they're tuning, but you can kind of see it here a little bit. Depending on who you're shooting, you generate a lot less ult. And then for DPS players, the role passive they get right now, and this is something we're definitely iterating on and tuning, maybe even more aggressive than the other ones, is they get a movement speed bonus just across the board, which you can see here. You can see it's not like massive. It's not like everyone's going to be soldiers sprinting around the map or anything. But we have found so far, like, players probably attest to this too, like any kind of movement speed changes to anything is huge. This is why Lucio was considered sort of like, mandatory for so long, because he was the only one bringing move speed. Granted, he's a lot more move speed, but so we started a little higher. We were tuning it back a little bit. We're trying to find the number here, but it's really interesting in what it allows you to do as far as even just like basic map traversal. You can just flank a lot easier, and you don't have to commit as much time to the flank and to get back. But also, like, there are times where, let's say you're like Reaper or something, and you commit your resources to get at an enemy Zenyatta or something, and he's trying to run around a corner just get away from you, and you can just catch him. Give it a little bit of time, you'll just get up close to him and close that gap. So that's pretty powerful, even though it's kind of a little subtle there. And then the support changes is, this is probably something that Ana mains especially are gonna love to hear, but the support players all get automatic health regen after a certain amount of time of not taking damage, which is basically Mercy's passive.
That's great.
Right, exactly. So it's Mercy's passive, but a lot
Ja,
less.
das wird super.
Mercy's passive will still exist.
Yeah.
It's like a much stronger version. But this is still there, so I always feel like you're an auto player. Obviously when you're really low, you're like, I guess I'll nade myself. But sometimes you're missing like 50 health, and you're like, am I gonna waste my nade just to heal myself? Where's my other healer?
Usually
Like,
the
where's
other
the
healers
health
are
pack?
in front of you as well, so like they have to turn around
Right,
to see you.
right. Exactly. So that's been really awesome, especially for us designing new heroes, because I feel like we're in this position every time we design a new healer. It's like, okay, well, we have to come up with some mechanic that they can heal themselves, because it's like ridiculous that you can't shoot yourself in the foot or whatever. Is always on a joke, but so now they have these sort of like, we don't have to worry about that anymore unless we wanted to add something like in Mercy's case or even Zenyatta's case for shields. Shields regenerate on top of this, so you'll actually get double regen if your shields are regenerating. So those heroes still retain their sort of extra regeneration bonuses, but
Das mit der Heilung für die Supports finde ich
Yeah,
ganz
of course,
gut
on the
eigentlich.
horizon, we're going to be showing more of our new maps here in Overwatch 2. But something I noticed that kind of
Das
snuck
macht
past us
tatsächlich
here,
Sinn.
some footage of May. So
Oh,
walk us
yeah.
through this, because May seems like she's been changed
Yeah.
pretty drastically, at least in terms of how she
Yeah.
operates.
So this is actually the kind of tip of the iceberg, and that's some changes I can talk about. But May was the first one we sort of checked into the build and wanted to play with for a long time. So if you notice here, she doesn't actually fully freeze the enemy here at all. She still slows them, but she
Thank
doesn't
God.
never go to a stun all the
Thank
way.
God.
Okay,
Compensation,
May
of course,
freest
does a
keinen
lot more
mehr.
damage. So it's it's really scary to be getting hit by her because you're taking damage and you're slowed. But of course, there's a lot of ways to escape. You can have help and everything, but you never actually get in that lockdown state and be like, okay, well, here's the free headshot. I guess I'm dead. It's, and for her, it's really interesting too, because she still has, at least right now, she still has that sort of cleave effect, the piercing that can hit multiple targets. So and you're doing so much damage now. It's kind of fun to play this game and try to get all this extra damage, because you can straight up just kill people now by piercing through a tank, or certainly if Zarya's ulting or something like that, you can just pierce through everybody and just kill them yourself. So it's kind of an interesting.
Ich meine, gut, auf der anderen Seite, wenn du kein Double
still has an
Tank mehr hast,
interesting
hast kein
back and
Double
forth with
Dive
their
mehr,
secondary fire as well. But
dann
as I
hast du auch
mentioned,
nichts,
it's
was die
kind of the
Gegner...
tip of the iceberg, because
frieren kann.
What we're really playing around with, and this isn't actually in this build, this is something we've been experimenting with, hasn't quite been successful enough to quite put it in the build yet, but this is something we're looking at, is just generally looking at crowd control across the whole game. Like, where do we want it to be? Who should have it? Because we certainly we've gotten feedback over time. We totally understand and respect, like, sometimes you're playing against, the ultimate CC team with like May and I don't know, McCree and whatever, and especially as a tank, I'm sure you're well aware of this. And you're just like, oh my god, I hate my life. So we've been experimenting with like just generally setting guidelines. Like, okay, tanks should probably have CC. They're all about space control, and they have that role to be able to earth shatter or create that those great opportunities. But should as many DPS heroes have CC as May? Maybe McCree doesn't need a stun, and so we're looking at all of these, especially mostly actually really the DPS and the supports. Currently, like, again, this is all like really hot off the presses because it's not even in this build, but we're probably thinking that like Ana's pretty cool right now. People are generally pretty cool with her sleep. There's a skill shot element involved.
You can give me one more
There's
sleep
a lot of
if you want.
just keep going. How about like a fan of sleep darts? It just kind of hits everybody. You're giving me cool talent ideas, actually. So like that, we're still playing. That one seems pretty cool, but like McCree, probably not so cool, even though he's sort of like ingrained on McCree as a stun. That's like what he's about. But it's like, okay, well, what if he didn't? What if he had something else? Or what if it worked a different way? And of course, that almost has as many ramifications as the tank changes, because it's like now we're talking about, okay, we take all the CC away, Tracer, Doomfist, Wrecking Ball. These heroes are just like out of control now, right? Because like they're sort of heavily countered by CC. So then we got to go back and change those heroes, of course, as well as the compensation for the CC heroes. So that is something that's like heavily in progress, and I'm hopeful that I think we'll be able to get some reductions in there. I'm sure. I think a lot of our fans would like to see it.
Im Endeffekt schmeißen sie aber 50% von dem Spiel weg und designen es neu. Darauf läuft es am Ende dann raus.
It definitely feels like, Jeff,
wenn man das so sich anhört.
We were at points we were wondering, like, is this game like a MOBA? Like, how important is that positioning, the tactical, the ability usage element? How important is the shooting element? It's not uncommon for for developers to say this game's all, it's about the gunplay, but as the game evolves and you have these ideas and you bring these new abilities in, that it can sort of change that. Super. Usually, mate, it's hard to get you to stop talking, but you've had a moment to absorb some of this. Let's talk about how you think the role of the main tank or tank in this regard is going to change in maybe an Overwatch 2, and sort of some of your thoughts about where the CC is going. How's it going to feel? You have a rock hard mental, dude. Like the way you sit on that stream and you just go. But tell us how you think this sort of changes.
Yeah. So that was kind of a big worry of mine, was like, you say one tank, and I'm thinking current Overwatch where you're playing against a Brig and then an Ana and then a McCree and a May, and then you're stun locked for 17 seconds, then you want to alt F4. But if they're if it is looking at the rest of the CC in the game, and you're looking to reduce that across the board, and then on top of that you're adding more utility to tanks, I think that's it's going to make it easier to do that, because I have felt that CC is kind of it's a little out there sometimes. It's not always the most fun to play against, and especially for me, I always felt that displacement CC was almost more egregious than like stuns, because like if you get booped by like a Lucio and like a Brig whip shot or a ball that can like swing back and forth, I always felt that was more like annoying and frustrating to play against, because you couldn't really control that. Like you kind of just got knocked everywhere, and that was just the way it was. Are those being like looked at as well as stuns, or is it like everything across the board?
Yeah, definitely. But the nice thing is we have this new tuning knob of the tank passives to say, if we still want Lucio to be able to boop enemies off cliffs or something and still leave that strong, but we still think tanks are being booped too much, we can just dial that like knockback reduction up a little bit for the tanks, so they're less affected by it. So it's a nice place to be.
Absolutely.
All right, that's nice to hear.
I mean, yeah, we're drilling down pretty heavily into like what it means to be a tank player, and I think talking about it is good, but I kind of want to see some more of it in action. I mean, Dion, I can see it here on the little preview screen, but our next map is really incredible, and it really captures, I think, the vivacity and vibrance of a region of the world that's really known for it. Talk to us through this map that is Rio.
Okay, was?
Yeah, so Rio, another map we wanted to do for a long time. We have several artists on the team that spent a part of their life there, so it's pretty fun to kind of dive in and see this Overwatch version of Rio. The beautifully painted favelas, colorful, vibrant club. You get to visit where Lucio's club is. The team loves going to Brazilian barbecue, so one of the spawn rooms is a Brazilian barbecue place. You know, it's another map. We're just having a lot of fun creating different details and this aspirational version of this location for Overwatch 2. And it's a brand new payload here too. You guys saw earlier, it's a pretty fun carnival float. So we're just having fun with these maps. The cool Brazilian barbecue. It's fun and sunny and colorful, and I think it's a map that feels like Overwatch when you play it, you know?
I mean, already that sort of signature vibrance that, you know, so many of, Overwatch's maps have been credited for is there. Can you, obviously, I don't want you to give away too much of the story, but is there a context here? Like, where are the attackers starting from? Because I see some beach, I see different landscapes sort of getting fleshed out here as we go through the map.
Okay, so the defense actually starts in Lucio's home. So, yeah, obviously, there's a story layer to Overwatch that we want to tell, so Lucio plays a big part of that. So, you get a little hint of where we're going with that, but we're not talking too heavily about it.
Ich kann mir ehrlich
Also,
gesagt
Lucio's
nicht
club
vorstellen.
It's kind of a community place, so it's a place, if it was real, people can come there for free. He's a community guy. We wanted to showcase this.
Ich kann mir irgendwie nicht vorstellen, dass die es schaffen, wenn Overwatch 2 rauskommt,
yeah, it's connected to the story of
dass die
Overwatch.
alles
We'll
so
just have to wait and
gut
see how closely Rio plays into the game.
balancen.
You saw a little bit at BlizzCon.
Ich kann mir das
a while
irgendwie
ago,
nicht
but,
vorstellen.
There's definitely more.
Die haben jetzt 5 Jahre
So,
gebraucht,
I
einen
do have a question for Jeff. Sorry to cut you
einigermaßen
off, Mitch, but I do have a question if that's fine. So,
funktionierenden
I'm pretty sure, like,
Zustand
way back in the
zusammenzubauen.
day, There was like an interview that I read that was like
Und jetzt
5 was
kommt
too small and 7 was too big
Overwatch
for
2, wo
the
sie so
roster
viel
limit, and then
umbauen
6 was
müssen,
perfect.
dass du
But, like,
eigentlich
I'm
wieder
kinda
von Null
curious, like,
anfängst.
where along like the Overwatch timeline did that philosophy kind of change? Like, was it roll lock? Was it like people learning
Ich
how
kann
to
mir
play
nicht
the game
vorstellen,
better?
dass...
Like, you know what I
Pretty
mean?
much all of this, yeah, I mean...
Ich kann mir irgendwie nicht vorstellen, dass sie das
I mean,
schaffen,
we know so
dieses
much about the
Spiel
game.
so
I mean,
zu
that's what Aaron
balancen, dass
touched
es
on
am
at the
Ende
beginning,
passt. Ich kann es mir nicht
Before
vorstellen.
everything, and you could just play 5 Winstons. In fact, we had an internal tournament where that was the strategy. 5 Winstons and a Zenyatta. It was sort of like, oh my god, this seems like maybe a problem, or is this cool? We don't know. So, like, obviously, when you're building really any game, you try to make the best judgments for what you have and what you're playing.
Vielleicht hätten wir
Once you
BR machen
have the game
sollen,
in
wo
the
sie einen
wild,
Champ
get
releasen
everybody's
können,
hands and
ohne
it
groß
marinates
zu
for a while and you
balancen.
make the changes, like, your opinion on the stuff definitely changes. So,
BR?
I think over time, like it was touched on, we were still keeping an open mind. to
Dauert halt noch ein paar
maybe
Jahre, bis es
do some
fertig
kind of
wird.
changes,
Hallo
and then
Lazy Frosch,
coming
schönen
to
guten
Overwatch 2,
Abend.
we were just like, let's revisit everything, and that was
Was
definitely
meinst du
one
mit BR?
of the major core decisions of Overwatch 1 we were really looking forward to revisiting. And at
Ach,
that
Battle
point, we were
Royale.
just like, yeah, maybe this is actually
yeah,
just
check.
much better. Maybe we were wrong all along. Although the people always say it's kind of a design thing. People say you're not necessarily wrong at the time just because you were wrong.
Wie
in
gesagt,
retrospect.
ich will nicht 100% skeptisch sein.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a hybrid map. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Für mich ist es einfach nur, sie probieren hier was Neues und du fängst eigentlich von vorne an. Weil du musst so viele... Was er gesagt hat, du willst CC kontrollieren. Geht aber nicht, weil dann sind andere Helden. Das müsstest du andere Helden auch balancen. Das wird nie passieren. Weil die könnten alles wegschmeißen und komplett von vorne anfangen. Aber was machst du mit Tracer? Was machst du mit Ball? Was machst du mit Doomfist?
As we move into the second phase, all of a sudden it's less about chokes and overpasses and it's just this
Weil jetzt hast du schon May,
so much high ground here.
die nicht mehr countern kann, die keinen Ball mehr countern kann. Das heißt, du hast nur noch Sombra und McCree.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh, that was just one
Blizzard
thing.
macht jetzt Paid Beta,
We're trying
ja.
more of this phased approach with the visuals and the gameplay as we move through the space. So you saw it was a bit more open. As you get the payload, there's a feeling of changing gameplay and art as well. So this visual progression as well as gameplay, it's much more clear.
Stell dir mal das nächste vor. Du hast Charaktere wie
Yeah,
Ash,
one thing that
Widow,
maybe it's just a
Reaper.
coincidence, but I feel like a lot of chokes
Die
in-
sind halt
in
komplett
Overwatch
out of
1,
control.
Like specifically, like, I think, like
Du hast kein
Hanwha
Schild mehr.
first or, like,
Das
going
heißt,
through
Widow
King's
und
Row
Ash haben
second.
Freibahn, wie du
They're very,
siehst.
like, tight and, like,
Die haben
it's
relativ
perfect
freie
for, like,
Bahn
a
eigentlich,
Reinhardt
außer die
shield
Map
to spread
verhindert.
across, and it can be,
Weil du
like,
hast keinen Tank wirklich, der
real
das
pain to get
verhindert
through those
jetzt.
sometimes, 'cause you feel like you really only have, like, one way to go through. But I'm seeing, at least in the other two maps that we looked at, a lot more a lot more flanks.
Ich bin
and
mega
ways to
skeptisch.
access the
Du wirst
point,
dieses
and
Spiel nie
I
gebalanced
think
kriegen.
that's overall better for the design because I feel like when you, especially on Hanamura first, like going through that
Mir
choke
hat wow
is
wieder
kind
Spaß
of,
gemacht,
you
aber
know, it
so
can
wie
be
das
real-
gerade läuft,
it
gebe
can
ich
be
denen
real
kein
not
Geld
fun
mehr.
sometimes to
Irgendwas stimmt bei
people, if you're
Blizzard
just
ganz
not
gewaltig
clicking
nicht
or
seit
if
einiger
it's just,
Zeit.
you know, they have
Klar,
a
die ganzen
hard
guten Leute
comp
sind weg.
that
Denen
you
sind
just
alle
can't
guten Leute
counter, and
abgehauen,
I think it's just better overall.
weil sie keinen Bock mehr drauf haben.
Yeah, if we want to give players more options to solve a problem, say
Ich
they're
bin
stuck at
echt
the choke,
skeptisch.
they have a few more options
Ich
to
kann mir das
break
nicht
through,
vorstellen, dass das
basically. They don't
funktionieren
have
wird.
to
Ich
rely
kann es
fully
mir
on
beim
the
besten Willen
tank
nicht vorstellen.
powering through this time, but yeah, that's,
Ich würde
that's
mich
always
gerne
a thing,
irren.
trying to
Ich würde mich gerne irren und würde
improve
sagen,
the
yo,
options players have to
5
solve.
Player, ein Tank, das
Situation.
funktioniert super und die haben es einfach raus.
Overwatch 1 that will be reworked, or
We don't know
can you
yet.
not say? Is that secret?
Nee.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
So obviously, you've got one less hero on the battlefield. Your maps are much more labyrinthine, I guess, or just bigger, right? It's just a large, you know, there's so much more ground you could cover if you wanted to take a different approach. How do you sort of balance how big the map is, right? Because obviously there's a sense where, like, you know, if you go too far in one direction, right, it can seem quite barren. But here, like, everything, there's attention to detail everywhere, right? There's so many crisscrossing ways of approaching the point. So it doesn't feel big, but it definitely, as opposed to maps we saw in Overwatch on live right now, it definitely feels bigger, right? Was that ever a consideration, trying to balance that, the sort of size and the majesty of it all?
Yeah, it's definitely more detailed than before, and again, the more options, there's more passageways and buildings for players to move through and build strategies from. But ultimately, the maps are in a fairly similar size to the previous. You're just seeing a lot more detail out of the Overwatch 2 engine. We have a lot of cool upgrades that allow us to do more while keeping a smooth performance.
Was macht denn Ball jetzt eigentlich besser?
Yeah, it's something we're constantly playing with, the scale of maps and how it feels to move through the space, visually as well as gameplay wise.
This really has like a Dorado feel almost, right? We have sort of payloads that are moving through underneath, and there are multiple levels here. This is not just sort of 2 levels here. There's even more options, I guess, to sort of make use of this verticality.
Und das ist halt
Yeah,
klassisches
there's a lot of high
Ballplay.
ground, right high ground. There's so much going on.
Du wirst
here.
sleeved, du wirst
I love this one in
naded,
particular,
kriegst
like, taking
unfassbar
that
viel
middle high
Damage und
ground
kommst
is-
trotzdem lebend raus.
You know, really important. If you can hold it, it's fantastic, but it's just really hard to hold because you have all these upper flank routes and under flank routes and stuff, so it ends up being like kind of a gambit to try to even take it and hold it, especially when you don't have
Und guck mal, wie
10
schnell das
seconds to sit on
Winston-Schild
it with
kaputt
barriers
ist.
all the time. But it's so
Also mit
powerful.
anderen
You can see
Worten,
Widows
Schilde
right
sind
there. It's
komplett
so powerful
nutzlos in
with
diesem
this line of
Spiel.
sight on everything.
Weil die sind einfach weg, die werden einfach
So,
weggelöscht.
is Universal ult charge nerfed, or is it just as a result of the tank changes that it seems like people are getting their ult slower?
It's mostly just the tanks, and we don't have. They're probably. I can't remember exactly all the individual changes, but I think we probably adjusted.
Ja, schau das an.
heroes here and
Widow
there,
kann alles
there's
machen, weil du
background
hast
there,
effektiv keinen Schild.
it's almost
Du hast
entirely just
effektiv
tank
keinen
changes.
Schild mehr,
There are a lot of
der die
old
Widow-Shots in
players.
irgendeiner Art und
Well, I guess it's
Weise
one less tank to shoot as
verhindert.
well, so it makes it
Right.
a little bit harder.
Though looking at Widow is an interesting example. We haven't adjusted the snipers too much.
Was
yet.
okay
We
ist für
couldn't
mich
really
als
cross down
Widow-Main,
because
das Problem
a
ist
lot
halt
of
aber, wenn du halt permanent im
sort
Spiel
of control
weggesniped
snipers
wirst,
is
hast du, glaube ich, keinen Bock mehr. Und du hast Ash und du hast Widow.
Widow against a comp that is,
Und
you
hast
know,
keine
like
Möglichkeit,
back in the day when
das
you had the
vernünftig
Bone or
zu
something like that,
countern,
like,
weil du
definitely
hast ja nur noch
a lot
einen
more
Dive.
powerful,
Du
so,
hast ja nur noch einmal
Yeah.
Diva
they're not
oder
really good at
einmal
control.
dann
I feel
Winston.
like on some of these choke points, it's definitely a
Damit
lot more
killst du halt
wider
keine zwei
than
Sniper.
some other maps, and I feel like, you know, if unchecked,
Weil der
some
Punkt war ja, warum
Widows could do a lot of
6v6 so
damage.
gut war, dass du sagen konntest, selbst wenn du Double Sniper
ja,
gespielt
ja,
hast, und nimm mal
ja,
Hanzo
ja,
noch.
ja,
Ein besseres
ja,
Beispiel, nimm mal Hanzo noch.
I mean,
Du
you know,
konntest halt
we
wenigstens
talk about
mit
how sort of tanks have changed now,
Winston
sort of allow them
Diva
to be more
beide
multi-purpose
Sniper
and
so ein
sort of fill the
bisschen
broader spectrum of roles. Obviously,
aufhalten.
Like, you know, when you have a
Kannst du hier nicht
Reinhardt,
mehr.
you kind of know what the player is playing for, right? The
Also
shield
Double Sniper
creates
ist halt
space,
einfach
right? You create
feuerfrei.
space just 'cause the shield exists. And with someone like Roadhog,
Ich bin
they create space
skeptisch.
because of the threat of the hook, right? It's not even something
Ich
that's
glaube, die werden
necessarily-
das-
it's implied threat, right? It's not
Exactly.
Die werden das so zum Beta-Testen rausgeben.
What is the
Mit
idea
diesen
for a tank? Do you
Änderungen
still want there to be the
garantiere
mix
ich
of
dir,
there
die
sort of
Leute
being
werden
that implied
Aufschrei
threat plus
machen.
obviously a very
Weil du hast
visible
gewisse Comps, die
threat?
viel zu mächtig
You know, has
sind.
it changed the way you think about how tanks create spaces now? Obviously, all tanks have to be able to do that to some degree, regardless if they have a shield or not.
Laut Beta-Pod.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It obviously also impacts new hero design. Working on new heroes, how they're going to interact with creating
Ich kann
space
mir
and
das nicht vorstellen.
defending
Ich
their
kann es
team.
mir null vorstellen.
Certainly, looking at Arisa's not being played here for a reason because we're looking at her really heavily. Any hero that as sort of just the really kind of heavy static slow defense are the ones we're kind of.
Vielleicht fehlt mir aber auch das Big Brain hier gerade.
And then just that alone already makes Roadhog shine a little bit because he's not being compared to the huge barrier Reinhardt. But certainly, should have healed there first probably, but he went for it. Yeah, so like there's a lot of changes we can make now in this world that would have been really scary to make before, especially in regards to cooldowns. So like Roadhog used to have a much faster hook way back in the day. Maybe we could bring that back, especially in a world where all the tanks are pretty aggressive, so it doesn't feel like it's
Oh nee, bitte nicht noch
we still want to make sure there's
schnellere
no, like,
Hooks
counter
auch
play.
noch.
Like, I made him dodge the hook, and then we had no opportunity to attack, and just hooked again right afterwards. So it's certainly a balancing act, but a lot of the tank sort of tankiness can be just in the hero themselves now. Because if you get to go in and be threatening, like with all this extra damage, and just be hard to kill, you're just freeing space by existing.
What an animal.
Obviously, Super, I'm curious at your opinion here. Obviously, as someone who plays tank, right, and you'll play, main tank as we called it, or off tank. What is it that makes you sort of feel most powerful when you're playing tank, right? Because obviously, all the heroes offer something so different, each of them. But could you narrow it down to something? What makes you feel like MTD feel?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it comes down to like decision making, right? And a lot of that currently is kind of based off of the fact of what your second tank is doing, which is obviously no longer a thing because there's a removal. And I feel like this is really gonna have to rely a lot more on like your supports keeping you a lot more alive as opposed to like your off tank or secondary tank, being in coordination with you. Because the supports now focus on one tank in
wo
particular.
keiner im Voice-Chat ist.
As opposed to having
Musst
to
du
split
mehr
between
koordiniert spielen.
And I feel like that's probably gonna have
Wo
to
keiner
give a
im
lot
Voice-Chat ist
Tanks
entkommen.
gonna have to play a lot more, I guess.
Musst du mehr kommunizieren. Das muss man auf der Zunge zergehen lassen. Du musst mehr kommunizieren. Kannst vergessen.
Help them out in that way.
I feel like it definitely changed. I know, there's a good handful of players.
Wenn du ein 5-Stack bist, ja, dann kannst du es machen. Laut Rantiput. Ja, weil das Quatsch ist. Weil die gehen davon aus, dass jeder im Voice-Chat ist und jeder dann redet. Das passiert zero. Aus 5 Spielen habe ich vielleicht ein Spiel, wo die Kommunikation okay ist. Die restlichen hast du keine Kommunikation. Und wenn es irgendjemand salty, der sagt, spiel was anderes. Das ist halt der Wunschvorstellung. Das passiert in der Overwatch League vielleicht. Oder wenn du halt mit Freunden spielst.
Okay, yeah, I'll stop speaking. That's good. No, that's good. I'll stop speaking.
I'm curious where your opinion is. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's like we're talking about with just options, and like Super mentioned, like we just want to make sure that that's kind of the point of the Zarya change is just giving her more flexibility and more options. So, I mean.
Also ich finde, einige Änderungen finde ich durchaus okay, finde ich witzig. Wie mit Zarya zum Beispiel und Reinhardt, dass er halt jetzt hier 2 Fire Strikes hat.
Yeah, it's definitely just trying to create really interesting playmaking opportunities and just strategic thought, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of like to have the tanks exist, where it's if you really want to just click heads, there are probably better options out there. I don't think we're likely to make any kind of like sniper tank out there or anything like that, because there's a lot of other opportunities for that. We'd like to try to keep the tanks like I was mentioning with the crowd control changes as an example of this. We'd like to keep the tanks being the ones who are primarily able to do crowd control, and that's also with only being one tank now. It means still there's going to be a lot less crowd control in the game in general, but still allow them to sort of flex that particular element.
Right, so you talk about obviously taking a little
Die Map
bit
ist
of
witzig.
that away from May, but obviously it's still something that, you feel like you could include in the game. It almost feels like it's a more moderated approach to it now, because tanks can be the ones that bear a lot of that sort of crowd control potential. It just means that there's, now it's just that one hero on the battlefield that really is able to produce so much of it outside of, 5 different forms that are coming in. So it feels like almost
Exactly.
responsibility as a tank player is almost kicked up a notch there, because you got to be a jack of all trades in some cases.
Du bist halt aber noch mehr von deinem Tankplayer abhängig. Wenn dein Tank trollt oder wenn ein Tank trollt jetzt, oder wenn halt einfach einen eigenen Willen hat und halt nicht mit dem Team zusammenspielt in dem Sinne, hast du halt verloren. Du hast halt keine Chance. Und so hast du wenigstens noch einen zweiten Tank, aber der versucht mal so ein bisschen zu balancen dann. Aber sie haben so schön gesagt, du hast so viel Verantwortung jetzt als Tank. Die richten sich nach Overwatch League Hepis. Da kommunizieren sie alle. Ja, ja, aber das passiert halt in normalen Competitive halt nicht. Und in Quickplay gleich dreimal nicht. Und das ist halt aber ein Problem, finde ich. Und wie gesagt, du bist halt komplett darauf ausgelegt. Egal, das juckt dir doch nicht. Ja, das merke ich. Das Problem ist, nehmen wir mal Overwatch League und Contenders raus. Du legst so viel Verantwortung in einen einzigen Spieler und der nicht trollt und sonstige Sachen macht und gut ist und mit dem Team zusammenspielt. Ich glaube, das geht schief. Das kann ich mir nicht vorstellen, dass es gut geht.
You really feel like you're actually wielding a very high caliber weapon, right? That actually has weight and it has a sense of kickback and sort of makes sound.
Und ich möchte doch gar nicht salty sein dahingehend, das will ich gar nicht sein. Ich sehe nur die Gefahren, die das mitbringt. Da fängt's ja schon an, der nicht trollt.
And being on the receiving end of Widowmaker's shot, it just feels so much more dangerous hearing the sound. So it helps you hide, basically.
Weil du hast halt effektiv keinen zweiten Tank mehr, der halt ein Stück weit für den ersten kompensieren kann. Und der kann ja auch mega schlecht sein. Was ja auch okay ist. Du musst ja auch kein Experte sein. Aber du hast praktisch so einen... Du gibst halt einen riesen Skill-Gap, weil du noch mehr davon abhängig bist von diesem einen Spieler. Und das sehe ich halt gefährlich.
Oh yeah. I mean, it adds so much. I mean, there's so much done to.
So, hab heute nur Quickplay gespielt. Hab gefühlt immer einen Bot-Spieler im Team.
They've been given the ability to create more accurate sounds in certain spaces. So, like an indoor tighter area or an indoor wider area can have different sounds and get that sort of sound of things bouncing off the walls. And it's so epic. And not only is it make the game feel a lot better as far as like your weapons and getting shot at, but like it actually makes the environment feel a lot better because you feel more connected, like you're actually in that space. Just the way
die Änderung finde ich übrigens gut. Mit den Sounds, mit den verschiedenen Environments etc. Das finde ich mega gut.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful now. If we could just walk through without all the bullets.
Yeah, I mean, it's only exactly right. Not so tranquil, I guess, when you're fighting for your life with 9 other people. Superman, I mean. Naturally, you know, these are changes that, you know, some of them you thought about before, obviously having played so much tank, and maybe you wish for some of these, and you know, I'd love to get some of your final thoughts here on sort of how tank is going to feel and heading into Overwatch 2, as I'm sure you'll be strapped in and
verschiedene Sounds. Wow.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I have to get a chance to play it first, but based on what I've seen, it looks like
glücklich sein, was man hat.
Tank's going to have a lot more pressure, I feel like, or a lot more of a role to play, because you know you don't really have that second tank to help you out and you know kind of help clean up your mistakes, if you will. Like, you know, if you get hooked, you get a bubble or matrix or, you know, whatever it may be. So I feel like in general it looks like tanks are going to have to play a lot smarter. But you do get the plus side of having
das war's mit Competitive.
Only focus on you as opposed to having
alles
two.
Unter GM kannst du jetzt vergessen.
Well, we're interested to hear some of your thoughts, of course, as the live stream goes, and as we get further and further down the development roadmap, as well as some of these changes get fleshed out even more. Super. Thank you very much for joining us, mate. Obviously, I'll be seeing you soon once the
wenn das Update für Free kommt, beschwere ich mal nicht.
Good to have you here, and yeah, we'll see you soon, man.
Das wird 100 Pro Free-to-Play werden. Wenn die Mann dafür wollen, sage ich Tschüss. Das wird 100 pro Free-to-Play. Mich würde mal interessieren, was so ein Flats oder Emong oder Cloudy etc., was die von der Änderung halten. Das würde mich mal interessieren.
Great to have you with us, Cupcake.
Free to pay to win. Ich glaube, dass Overwatch Free to Play wird. Doch, bin ich 100%ig sicher.
Oh man, I
Bin ich mir
really
sehr
like seeing
sicher.
all the new like hero looks and like the map visuals and the UI
Der
updates.
PvP-Teil wird Free-to-Play sein und die Stories werden Geld kosten.
I'm seeing a lot of little like UI updates
100
for
pro.
like support heroes and I'm really excited
Anders
about
macht das
them.
Game
So,
heutzutage
yeah.
keinen Sinn mehr. Keiner wird 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 Euro für Overwatch 2 bezahlen. Wird keiner machen. Aber der PvP kostet jetzt schon Money. Overwatch 1. Ja, aber ich glaube, die werden alles Free-to-Play machen. Ich glaube, die werden im PvP-Teil wird Free-to-Play sein und die Stories wirst du kaufen. Und dann gibt es einen Season Pass. Glaube ich nicht. Ich schon. Die werden es so machen wie Call of Duty. Du hast den Story-Teil Call of Duty und du hast den Online-Teil Call of Duty, der kostenlos ist. Weil so kriegst du viel mehr Spiele in die Spielerbase rein. Und dann wirst du Leute haben sagen, geil, ich will die Story ausprobieren. 100 pro.
Yeah, that's part of it is the passage of time. You can see
Activision, ich kotze ab.
I think there's a sneak peek at a few characters that there's a bit of age difference on them as well. A bunch of guys are part of Overwatch now, so they have access to cooler tech in their outfits. It's just, we're having fun kind of like in a way to show these guys have upgraded their equipment. They're ready to do battle in this new world. Fire here with their
Ich glaube, Jeff ist gegangen, weil er sieht, wohin das Game geht.
She has the armor that
Möglich.
fits the Overwatch team. Yeah, and just
Jeff war immer ein Verfechter von 6v6, weil er es immer gesagt hat, wir machen 6v6, weil wenn ein Spieler schlecht ist, kannst du es damit wunderbar kompensieren dann, weil du halt diesen Mehrfokus hast. Und ich glaube nicht, weil ich glaube, Jeff ist ein intelligenter Mensch und ich glaube, er weiß ganz genau, wenn du einen Tank weniger hast, hast du das Problem, also generell A, die Richtung, wo das Spielen geht und zweitens, wenn du sagst, machst 5v5, du packst viel zu viel Verantwortung an eine Person. Und dann ist es komplett random, ob du gewinnst oder verlierst. Ich könnte mir vorstellen, dass das... Es wäre immer so cool, wenn Jeff irgendwann sagt, warum er wirklich gegangen ist. Das würde mich mal interessieren. Ob er einfach was Neues machen wollte oder ob er keinen Bock mehr hatte auf das Theater.
You know, it's still stylized, but it just feels much more real, almost like you could touch it. This is in the environments as well. There's tons of nice detail. We've upgraded the lighting.
Ja, aber sowas wirst du nie erfahren, to be honest. Ich weiß, aber das wäre echt mal interessant.
All these things are just to make the world feel much
nee, das wirst du auch nie erfahren.
More dynamic, more animated things.
Bei der Gehaltsklasse sprichst du da nicht drüber.
Cool
ja, das schon.
Details that we weren't able to do before until we kind of tuned
das
some
ist mir durchaus klar.
in the engine and
da gab es eine Abfindung mit einem extra NDA. Ja, wahrscheinlich.
Overwatch style, keeping the game performance smooth, but you know, upgrading everything to the Overwatch 2 level.
Es wird trotzdem spannend zu wissen, aber klar, wir werden es nie erfahren.
The new upgrades to the skins and like just the heroes themselves, and you guys have all the skins from all the different heroes from Overwatch, and like how challenging it is to bring them in and like update their looks as well. Like, is that an easy process, or is it like tedious to make them all look just as good?
That's a great question. So a lot of the tech, for example, the skin shader will apply to all the older skins as well. So nice. Our engine team is working hard to kind of create a workflow that's easier for the artists, but it's still there's a level of work there. But everything you see on these new 2.0 heroes, the updated hair shaders, updated skin, detail maps, these will all carry over to the older heroes or the older skins. So a lot of stuff looks even better than it did before.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Da brauchst du halt wirklich einen Automatismus. Stell dir mal vor, du müsstest alle Skins neu machen.
practically every single skin in the game. So it'll be fun for players to see.
Is it going to be possible to like add more customization like with this new technology, like unlocking different like color schemes?
Das wäre
or
cool.
something like that,
Das würde
or,
ich
like, special
feiern.
weapon variations, even for like certain achievements or something like that, so we have
Das
more
würde ich
ways
feiern.
to customize the way our heroes look.
Nein!
Amazing question.
Oh.
Like, you have to wait and see.
That's not a no.
Okay, wait.
That ain't a no. That's not
It's not a yes
What about,
either.
like-
It's not a yes either.
Oh no. What about like mixing and matching like skins?
Noch
and
mehr
weapons?
Geld aus
Is
dein
that
Abziehen.
gonna be
Nein,
possible?
durch Gameplay, was du
Like,
freischalten
weapon
kannst.
from
Ich
weapons?
bezahlen.
Ah,
Yeah.
'cause,
Gameplay!
Like, that would be so much fun.
Spielen!
Like, you get creative with that. Can you imagine? Like, oh man.
Now, I mean,
Ugh,
we're
okay.
we're theory crafting. You know, we're off to the races here already. I can't wait.
I'm like, so many ideas.
There's a lot of fun stuff in store. Yeah.
You do have something
Aber der
to
Automatismus muss echt gut sein, weil ansonsten schauen die alten Skins mega beschissen aus und du siehst, dass halt migriert sind. Ich hoffe, das ist wirklich gut.
Show us, Dion. Do you want to talk us through this one?
Da müssen die sowas wie Apex machen. Ja, klar.
This one will be, I think he's a Torbjorn.
Yep.
So this is Torbjorn 2.0. You can see he's
Nice.
a little older. He has a bit better technology and gear. And yeah, he's the Torbjorn we all know
Das
and
macht
love.
die
He's
AI.
just
Ja, genau.
much more in.
Den Originalskin musst du haben, den Recolor musst du durch
You can see
Ingame
the
Currency
hairshade
kaufen.
really well on
Ja,
his,
genau das.
beard.
Fände ich
But, like,
super.
imagine
Oder zumindest
that
andere
with, like,
Waffenfarben. Wenn du
this
sagst, du willst
summer
Tracer, das halt
Like,
rote Kugeln schießt, ist das was, das
like,
musst du halt
that's the kind of
freispielen.
stuff I wanna see at some
Finde ich
point.
vollkommen okay.
So
Spiel
that-
30 Stunden
you can
Tracer
definitely
und
see- I
dann
mean,
zack,
some of the-
kannst
some
du
of the
die
characters
Waffe
are big, right? They're
recoloren.
vibrant and obviously, you know, you can definitely see the
Yeah,
passion
Oder
of
halt
the player.
Münzen
And some
farmen, das dann
stuff,
kaufen
you
und
know,
so weiter.
it's the-
Wäre
it's
ich
the
vollkommen
patches on the
dafür.
knees of his jeans, it's the connectors
Und dann
between
siehst du auch, dass du einen
the
Helden
hardware
lang
that he's
gespielt hast,
using,
etc.
The goggles that he has. Ich
glaube, so krass ins Detail wird's nicht gehen. Es wäre aber schön, weil es würde praktisch dafür sorgen, dass du mehr spielst, weil du den Helden customizen kannst. Also, dass du auch zeigst, dass du halt den Helden viel gespielt hast. Und nicht nur, weil du mit Widow halt 100% Trefferchance hast.
Better and more detailed up close, but he maintains that silhouette we come to know and love and like to shoot at. So,
Ich muss auch ehrlicherweise
that's,
sagen, auch wenn die
kind of
Skins
the-
mega gut
Extra
ausschauen,
props to the VFX team for
ich meine,
doing
ich sehe
some
die
of
meisten
the
Skins
next,
in-game halt
kind of
nicht. Das
2.0
ist halt
VFX on his
so.
pack there. Looks great. too.
Right.
Smoke coming
Ich
out.
sehe halt meine Waffen.
Yeah, it's a serious modernization of-
Und dann kill ich die
not-
Gegner und
not-
ich sehe
you're
mich
not
halt
just
im
seeing
Highlight.
how he's
Das ist
seen
halt
how
so.
he behaves in the game and how he interfaces with the world that he's
Ja,
been in.
aber bis so ins
Let's
Detail,
shift
dass da
gear
jetzt
here and
kleine
talk a
Dinger
little bit
drauf
more,
sind,
about
das
our
sieht
next
doch
map.
kein Mensch.
Rome was teased at BlizzCon Online, right? We've got
Und
these
ich bin ein
beautiful
Grafik-Nazi.
panoramas, these
Aber selbst
Colosseum
das ist
looking
für mich,
things,
wo ich
this
mir
like
denke,
sort
so,
of- this sort of future Rome, but
es ist mir halt scheißegal.
that's obviously coming up next, and it is a push map. So I want to talk a little
Also
bit more
sorry,
about
aber das ist
how
mir halt
the push map is
scheißegal, ob da
actually
kleine
developed.
Details
The
da
newest
sind. Ich sehe
game
die
types of
eh
the
nicht.
game, give some really unique situations to play through.
Ich stelle mich ja nicht
Let's
hin
delve
und mache einen
into it a
Dance,
bit
Move
deeper. I
und
have to
zoome in den
assume,
Helden
right,
rein.
like there has to be some symmetry to the map. I'm sure is that sort of
Right.
Okay, what's important when designing a push map? Let's start there.
So symmetry is obviously the
Kannst
number
nicht mal ein
one
Overwatch.
thing,
Ja, das
or
meine ich ja
it makes
damit.
it
Das
very
ist so
competitive because both
sinnlos.
sides have a similar
Es
layout.
macht nur den Highlights dann
But
halt
it
Sinn.
also makes it tough to create a second one. So you had Toronto that we saw earlier, where it was a more of an S-curve layout to the battle. In Rome, you'll see it's kind of a C. You kind of cut through the Colosseum.
Grafik ist
becomes
auf minus
tighter
100, was juckt mich
once
Details?
you reach
Ja
the
klar,
divide.
wenn ich
Once you
competitive
see the players
spiele,
play. This one
ich
was
habe alle
really
Grafiken auf
found a
Low.
way, okay, this is how we make iterations on push. At first, the S curve was an easy one to go to. It's make the map snake through buildings and things. But how do we switch it out for a different space? And we knew we wanted to make Rome. We knew we wanted to go through the Colosseum. So that's kind of part of the initial design for this version, the push map. But it's a very fun mode, especially on.
Brauch Essen,
in
sonst
Rome.
werde ich
The
Depri.
thematic
Sehr
of the
gut.
scene plus pushing the robot kind of enhances how fun this game type is.
it's such a crazy juxtaposition between all the sci-fi movies that you might watch and then a location that is obviously known to us, and sort of thinking about how the passage of time might change it.
Mich würde mal interessieren,
You mentioned the first thing you mentioned.
wenn du einen Tank hast,
it's very competitive as a result of that symmetry.
wie spielst du dann
You
Sombra?
guys as the developer team on Overwatch have had a good chance to see how so many of these maps play out at the highest.
Hört jetzt Kopuro und ich muss die Frage nochmal stellen, wenn Kopuro wieder
How
da
much
ist.
is our Overwatch League a factor when you're sort of considering a game type or a map design like this? You know, how often do you think, like how the players could break this, or they're gonna sort of go for the 1% plays on this kind of map? Does that factor into the dev process all that much?
I think yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Jeff could probably answer this, man.
Yeah, I mean they certainly. I feel like it's hard to imagine a player base sort of breaking a map apart probably as much as the Overwatch teams.
Also ich muss sagen, die Maps finde ich eigentlich, was ich bisher gesehen habe, ganz gut.
Even the smallest things. So yeah, I mean, we definitely,
die gefallen mir echt ganz
as far
gut.
as like the specific layout, we're looking at all that stuff quite a bit. But especially when we're developing a new mode, it's very much taking into account how competitive it's going to be. And as was brought up earlier, based on the rule set, we want to make sure if we can avoid it, we want to avoid any kind of tie situation. This mode certainly prevents that. And then, as Aaron was talking about earlier, like we were debating whether or not this should be like kind of easy to push to the end, and then you get a point, and then the other team can, maybe it's multiple rounds, and each push is 1 point. But then it's like you get in that potential tie situation, and you lose some of that sort of epic tension of pushing it those last little bits, and people fighting over those little bits of space. And so I think, I mean, we're very cognizant of that, especially with new modes, thinking about how they're going to be played and competitive.
We had so many matches that came down to 2-3 meters. This is such a fun, you feel good even losing. You're like, that was a great battle, because it felt like we fought really hard for those last 2-3 meters.
Toll, das bringt mir super im Competitive, wenn ich mich super danach fühle nach dem Match, wenn ich halt trotzdem jedes Spiel verliere. Ja, super. Da kann ich stolz auf mich sein dann.
Wow, this is an incredible vista.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Also okay, die Map sieht schon geil aus.
Absolutely stunning.
Also das muss man echt sagen, die Map ist schon geil.
They only mentioned like the S-shape sort of thing, but it looks like there's some twists and turns here. It's almost like the path overlaps itself as well at some points.
It does. There's a little bit of C-shape, and then there's this bridge overpass that's pretty fun to encounter.
Die Map sieht schon echt geil aus.
I'm curious to see how this battle plays out once the players get to the overpass.
We'll be starting to
I feel like the two big features on this map, and we'll see it right away, is the first one is right in the under the Coliseum, basically.
Ich hätte jetzt echt Bock, einen Workshop aufzumachen in Overwatch und ein 5v5 Competitive zu machen. Ein Tank, 2 DPS, 2 Supports.
Looks sort of simple in basic geometry, but is like
und ein bisschen mit den Helden, die so anzupassen, wie sie es hier gesagt haben, so ganz grob. Um zu gucken, wie es sich anfühlt. Weil das, finde ich, sollten sie machen.
As far as between the pillars, and that was actually iterated on quite a bit. I remember opening them up, closing them. In fact, you see the tops are actually open, so you can climb over, fly over them. So we still allow some flanking routes if you're like a Pharah or Genji and you want to get cheeky. But we didn't want to close it off entirely. So that one section was sort of everyone's favorite right away in playtesting, and then just a massive amount of iteration on it is great.
Right.
So we'll see it here.
That quality of life chains on Winston's bubble does not go unnoticed, by the way. The duration of the bubble remaining being shown on the HUD is huge.
Oh yeah.
I love that
it's funny watching.
Sorry, I mean, I just love the curvature actually it actually reduces line of sight, right? So you cannot now just sit at one end of this sort of track and see the other if you're a sniper. So even that small tweak, has balance implications that I'm sure you've thought about to quite a great degree. I think because me and Cupcake are both support mains, I think something we're definitely going to be wanting to talk about here is that it's not just Zenyatta's HUD that's gotten a change, right? It seems like every sport.
Ich finde, das HUD an sich gefällt mir prinzipiell ganz gut.
Yeah, which like even the Zen placement of the orbs, it's so much better, like more in the middle rather than having.
Also gerade das auch hier, was die auch gerade sagen mit den
really nice.
mit Zenyatta, dass du sie besser siehst.
With, like, having Mercy, like it shows when Mercy's healing somebody a lot more
wer gerade die Dinge hat. Ich finde das ganz gut, dass du es besser siehst. Wer hat gerade Orb of
I like
die Ops.
I wish to see more with Anna. Like, I would love to see with Anna having it show like who she slept, like on the UI.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Icons sind
that would be so
viel
cool.
besser.
Especially because, you know, I feel like I have to tell my
Du
GPS
siehst es
player
mehr,
that
also du hast
in
einen
the
besseren
backline.
Überblick,
I don't know if you
finde
saw
ich,
that, but I just let the fire
was
out
gerade
there.
abgeht im
I
Spiel.
slept someone, yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you throw one, you don't know who it hit, like you're because there's so much going on. You're like, okay, I definitely slept someone, but I'm not sure who it was. That might be important to know.
That's my favorite part. You sleep against you accidentally.
Komisch, Bilder sind einfacher, schneller zu verstehen als Text. Ja, definitiv.
Exactly. Oh no.
And obviously, you
Und auch die
also
Lebensanzeige,
use
die du außen
indication
rum hast, dass du
if you
sofort
see
siehst, was hat er für Leben etc. Ich finde das mega gut.
On live, your screen sort of takes on like a sort of a very slight non-intrusive glow. But it seems here you've also changed how it's indicated to you that Mercy is sort of damage boosting you. Is that also the case with like Nano Boost? for
Die
example?
Werbebranche ist schon seit Jahren bewiesen, ja, das stimmt.
I can't remember if we've actually changed the 1P.
Was ich noch gesagt habe, bevor du, wo du abgehauen bist,
But in general,
mich würde mal interessieren, ob sie was an Sombra geändert haben. Stell dir mal vor, du hackst den einzigen Tank, den du im Spiel hast.
Those emails get sent out all the time, like, oh, look at these cool, skin changes and
Stellst du mal kurz
and
vor?
also VFX updates. Look at the VFX changes you're making and sound, of course. So it's kind of just awesome being
Fiel mir
like,
nur
even if
gerade
I'm
ein.
not directly, working on that stuff, just sort of seeing that stuff cross my email and the examples being sent out. It's just awesome, like day to day, seeing all the changes.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure your inbox is sort of swarmed with them. I sort of wonder what the look. It was mentioned at BlizzCon Online as well that sort of the assault game mode sort of there wouldn't be sort of further maps developed for, right? The focus would no longer sort of be on that. So I'd love to know what the sort of thought process is between sort of the removal of assault, or 2CP as it's fondly known, and the addition of push here.
Boom.
Right, so that has a long history actually. That's probably most of the people who really follow the game closely are aware.
Ich finde den Kill doch irgendwie schöner.
Obviously the assault map or 2CP.
Also vom Design her.
A lot of people had a lot of concerns with it, and we've tried to make a lot of changes to it. In fact, what people might not know is we've gone through multiple phases of like a heavy overhaul of it, but none of them ever really were good enough to go
Ist
into
cleaner,
it,
ja.
honestly. I always feel back.
Das UI ist
one time we
viel
had a
aufgeräumter,
new designer
finde ich.
join, and one of the first things we gave him was like, overhaul 2CP. What do you want to do?
I
And
don't
it was
know,
like,
mich macht
the
Overwatch
hardest
gerade ein
problem
bisschen
ever. Go ahead and
sauer.
solve it, new guy. It's like, oh, that's kind of rough.
Ja.
Actually, in retrospect. So we've got went through a lot of changes, and it got to the point where we were like,
Ich kann es nicht
we have to make
einordnen.
so many changes to get this where we want it to be. Like, is it even the same mode anymore? And at that point, if we're getting to that degree, why don't we just make a different
Right.
mode?
Yeah, let's make new.
Why even try to change it to that degree? So that's kind of how that ended up coming about.
Weil das Problem ist,
A lot of it
ich
was
habe so viele Fragen, so viele Punkte,
So that's kind of spicy, Jeff. You're trying to say that
die
there's
ich
other
gerne
ways to develop
stellen
it, you're trying to
würde.
play that.
I would say that we are constantly experimenting with new modes, but they're experimentation right now.
How crazy?
New York was.
Sorry, Dion, please.
Oh, sorry. New York was. We experimented a lot with New York before landing on the mode that we chose.
I mean, it seems like
and-
so many possibilities for that kind of map, right?
Right. Temple of Anubis, when we first showed that at BlizzCon, the shipping version actually changed, to try to fix 2CP even back when the game first came
Right.
out.
Yeah.
So we actually, the version we shared and the version that shipped with the game was pretty different from the choke point standpoint to try to address some of the 2CP challenges. So
We just left that spot in the map. Oh, sorry, Dion, I didn't cut you
Yeah.
off.
and that was it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just going to comment on it because we were there, although they just left it. But the other thing I was mentioning about this map, because I mentioned it in two things, is that area we just left it's like this corkscrew, basically.
Bends over
And it's
itself almost.
super interesting. Yeah, it it basically flipped on itself and goes over itself. And you can see it coming up here. So you go under, in this case you go to the right and then back up.
Ich würde
and cross
Overwatch
over
echt
it.
gerne mehr Raum für
It
Verbesserungen
is a
geben, aber die haben nun
really
5 Jahre dran
interesting
geschraubt
play.
und
In
die
fact,
können
when
mit
we were
Overwatch
first playing
2
it, I remember
nicht wie mit
we had our first feedback session where it was like, I don't know if
Original
I like
Overwatch
this or
anfangen.
not. It's either
Right.
amazing or it's terrible. I can't even tell. It's
Guck, irgendwie Overwatch
super
Beta
interesting
war
and very
after-
impactful.
after-
And so we were like, I think that means we keep going with it.
bevor
keep
after
playtesting it
Release,
and keep
wo es jetzt
iterating.
ist.
Obviously, having a big impact is almost more important if you can get the good
Ja, das
stuff
ist halt
out.
die Gefahr, die ich
So
sehe.
after a lot of iteration, it's definitely persistent. It's become
Weil sie haben ja
kind of
extrem
the most
viele gute
interesting spot to
Änderungen
play
ja
around,
gemacht.
because
There's
it's
a lot
like-
of drama there.
Aber wenn die das so
The
machen,
flanks,
die
you can
brauchen
flank
ja
from
wieder
on
5
top
Jahre,
to drop down
bis sie
below,
einen
so you can go
vernünftig
under this
balanceden
pass, or you just sit in the middle of that
Zustand
pass,
haben.
Reaper or something like that, and just drop down. Of course, you gotta worry about gonna be jumping up on you or something.
Weil das Problem ist,
There's
du
actually
hast
a
jetzt
little
ein
wall on the
kleines
right to climb
Dev-Team
up right there, if you're,
und die testen und
okay,
spielen
fine
rum
or
etc.
something. So
Und es
it's
wird
just like this-
100 Pro
when you're going through that after playtesting this map,
1 Million prozentig Leute geben, die genau wissen, wie sie die neuen Game-Mechaniken abusen. Dass du Comps schaffst, die du einfach nicht besiegen kannst, weil die Comps einfach unfassbar mächtig sind, weil es einfach imbalanced
There's a
ist
sneaky little
AF.
alleyway in there too. A tiny, once you're under the bridge, there's an alleyway there. Reaper 76.
Und wenn die 5 Jahre brauchen, das Spiel zu balancen, dann ist halt vorbei. Und ich finde den Push-Game-Mode zum Beispiel, ich finde den super. Ich glaube, der könnte echt Spaß machen alles. Aber das mit den Helden, weiß ich nicht. Ich bin da skeptisch. Weil du darfst ja auch eine Sache nicht vergessen. Es kommen ja neue Helden in Overwatch 2 dazu.
I was fascinated when I was watching the preview during the BlizzCon launch.
Auch die Visuals oben. Ja, das UI gefällt mir mega gut. Das ist mega geil. Du siehst mehr, es ist übersichtlich, es ist aufgeräumter. Es ist klarer. Du siehst, wer führt gerade, es steht extra nochmal da. Du kriegst relativ schnell einen Überblick, wie ist der Zustand des Spiels gerade. Nur ich sehe halt immer noch, wie sie damals Brick eingeführt haben. Brick hat das ganze Spiel kaputt gemacht. Weil Brick einfach viel zu mächtig war. Und wir reden jetzt davon, dass du die Helden, die du hast, musst du komplett rebalancen. Plus die ganzen neuen Helden. Und ich weiß ich nicht.
That seems like a way more intensive map design process as well, because you have to think of everything. You cannot leave a stone unturned when you sort of turn this tapestry into, you know, something vibrant like this.
Oder Echo, die einfach komplett Schilde wegradiert, die komplett Gegner wegradiert, weil es einfach so overpowered ist in gewissen Situationen. Mit Moira ist das bergab gegangen.
Really exciting stuff. I mean,
ja, kann sein, ja.
We already sort of got a feel for the game mode, but it's crazy just how different. I don't know if you feel the same, Cupcake, how different this feels from Toronto, even though it's the same game type, but the map sort of changes the feel and the flow so much.
It does, yeah. It definitely feels a lot different. I don't play it like a high-end like skill level, so I'm curious how it's gonna work on somebody on like my level. Like I'm like the average
Ich bin skeptisch.
Player, you know, I'm not like top 500.
Ich bin so skeptisch.
Like, I'm plat, you know, a lot of my Overwatch experience as a support, like I solo queue support. You know, like the struggle is real. And so my experience is like, you know, I have my tanks are just like Leroy Jenkins in, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And I'm just trying to like keep up, you know. So I'm curious, you know, how that's gonna go on, like, as like flat games,
Die Gefahr, dass dieses Spiel so unbalanced und unfair wird, die ist so hoch.
Hey, really quickly,
so y'all know how I feel, okay?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, you're in good company. I make no bones about my standing in the game. That was incredible. Thank you, Jeff and Dion, for walking us through Rome. We started from that sort of vibrant sort of overlook, and then we were straight into the action. I really love just the juxtaposition of sort of the futuristic tech plus a really historic location. And that's a lot of fun. I mean, speaking of incredible locations, we actually still have one more map to show everybody. So ladies and gentlemen, stick around. There is still more to come. A new map, an in-depth look that you haven't heard anything about, coming up on the other side of this break. So stick around for more of this Overwatch 2 PvP developer Livestream.
Wie lang geht der Livestream eigentlich? Ich muss morgen um 5 raus. Ich hätte gerne so ein bisschen Schlaf noch zwischendrin. Schlaf wird überbewertet. Ja. Das kann sein. Was machst du denn so früh? Ich hab Termin morgen. Schau dir das Wort morgen an. Dann ist er schon wieder alt. Außerdem warte ich noch auf die große Offenbarung, dass sie am Ende sagen, es war alles bloß ein Spaß, es ist immer noch 6v6. Oh, klar. April, April. Ja, schön wär's. Also je mehr ich drüber nachdenke, umso skeptischer bin ich. Je mehr ich drüber nachdenke, umso mehr denke ich mir, das kann nur schief gehen. Ist das ein Late April Fool's Joke? Ja, genau. Und dann kommt raus, die haben uns gerade einfach ein Overwatch Mobile gezeigt. Das ist Overwatch Mobile jetzt hier und das richtige Overwatch 2, das kommt dann noch. Die haben einfach bloß die Labels vertauscht. Und das Schlimme ist immer, Spiele meckern ja immer. Sobald irgendwas verändert wird, Spieler meckern immer. Du kannst das nie allen recht machen. Und es ist auch ein bisschen Gemecker, klar.
Welcome back, everybody, as we get ready for our final map of the day. Thanks to Mitch, thanks to all the other content creators that dropped by the stream. It was a ton of fun.
Ich werde damit noch nicht so
Back
ganz
to
warm.
back to the original crew, though. As I know, a lot has changed, obviously, with Overwatch 2's PvP. I mean, a lot changed with Overwatch 1's PvP throughout the eternity, but I think like this is a pretty drastic kind of change from what the players are used to at home. I guess for the players at home now, like, you know, what can the expectations be? You know, obviously, like you guys have mentioned, a lot of this is still work in progress.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, and I think it's important to recognize that while we're really excited about a lot of the changes that we're making to the game, I think there's probably a lot of people, you know, watching the stream that can't help but wonder how it's going to affect them, you know, and like we have a lot of tank players in the game, we have a lot of off-tank players in the game, and something that you said
emotionslos.
Overwatch has changed over the years. We talked about, you know, before we had hero limits or before we had roll lock, you know, like goats was a very popular part of Overwatch for a long time. Where
ja, Jeff war ein bisschen
emotionaler. 3 tanks instead of 2 tanks.
Der war ein bisschen community-näher auch gefühlt.
That has always been a part of Overwatch is the game does change over time. And I know that for some
Jeff
people,
war lockerer, ja genau.
Der
war locker, der war witzig.
To look at it.
Vielleicht muss er aber auch noch reinwachsen.
Or maybe it's a little bit shocking because
da gebe ich ihm eine Chance tatsächlich.
Any time a big change like this happens and you start settling into like a pattern of uncertainty or fear, you really translate it within your current context. But the game will continue to evolve and continue to shift. The shift from
vielleicht muss noch warm werden mit der Rolle, die jetzt hat. Ja,
the
genau.
shift into roll lock, it changed some of the meta of the game.
Yeah.
And now people look at the role of or all of the roles a little different than they did.
Ja, wir reden hier nicht von
Meta-Changes. I think that is a natural result of something like this. And so it might be easy to say like, well, I'm an off-tank
davon, dass du einen Spieler aus der Gleichung eliminierst.
And I get that there's strategy there and there's synergies between some of these tanks, but if you're an off-tank player, if you're a Diva player or a Zarya player, you can still be a Diva or a Zarya player. And what we're hoping is when you get in the game, because a lot of this is about how it feels to play those heroes, when you get in and actually feel what it's like to play as Zarya or Diva, you'll come away really enjoying the experience.
Ja, aber das setzt doch voraus, dass du nicht dominiert wirst von irgendwelchen führenden Comps. Und die Gefahr ist doch da.
Now, right? Where you're like, well, wait, like if I just had 5v5 today, like how would I do like Zarya or, you know, how it may work, but I think to some of the stuff that you guys have spoken to, especially you, Jeff.
Aber du kannst doch trotzdem auch jetzt Spaß mit Diva und Zarya haben, drum spiele ich die beiden ja. Und Reinhardt und Sigma. Weil doch jetzt auch schon Spaß machen in der aktuellen Meta. Mit 6v6.
And it is a big overhaul. We get that it's a big overhaul, but at the same time, it still feels like Overwatch when you're playing Overwatch. Like, the heroes all still feel amazing and incredible. You have these great plays. There is still a ton
wenn du nicht von der Meta dominiert
for your
wirst.
team and everybody on it.
Und die Gefahr ist doch da. Oder sehe ich das falsch?
I understand that it's a big change, but this is still the same game that we've been playing all along.
Nein, ist es nicht.
Yeah, it keeps all those core aspects that everybody loves about Overwatch. But
ist es eben nicht.
they're just kind of like changes a little bit of the core and push it forward. The final map we have today, Dion.
Also außer ich sehe es komplett falsch, keine Ahnung.
What are we going to show today? And like some of the maps. I was like, this map
sehe
needs
die
to be
Gefahr,
done.
dass du
Just,
führende
absolutely
Comps hast,
Monte
Metas
Carlo,
hast,
talk to me a little bit about
die
it.
unbesiegbar werden.
Okay, so Monte Carlo
Oder so
another map
krass werden, weil
it's
es
this
einfach
beautiful,
keinen Sinn macht,
opulent-
eine andere zu spielen.
the wealthy in the Overwatch universe go here to play, you know? Flying yachts, casinos.
Weil so
luxury
viele
hotels,
Heilung kannst du in den
AI
einen Tank nicht
F1
reinpumpen,
races. It's-
dass er nicht
we're
explodiert.
another map. We're having a
Außer
lot
du
of fun
spielst
just
Bub
applying this
hinten dran mit
Overwatch
Lamp.
aesthetic to the world and
Ansonsten
this universe
explodieren
in
dir die
Monte
Tanks
Carlo and
einfach weg.
Monaco. So, and this also has a nice story connection to the overall story of Overwatch 2. So look out for that as we share more later. But
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. I mean, and the one thing that strikes me about this map, and
Plus ja die ganzen neuen Helden, die dazukommen, mit neuen
area of the
Fähigkeiten.
map plays so drastically different. You know, once we'll actually see it in play, but is that something that you guys are looking at with map design, of just like how you guys can change like verticality, levels of terrain, really, you know, empower certain heroes or certain roles to really kind of take advantage of that?
We're definitely doing that, and I think a lot of the Overwatch 2 maps have features in them that we haven't built before. Everyone just got to look
Oh
at
geil,
Rome,
Pool. Ich will in den Pool
and we
rein.
have that sort of
Die Maps finde ich
sort of
geil.
like
Die Maps sind mega
switchback
gut.
section in it, or like the loop section, and that was something we tried 3 or 4 times over the entire course of Overwatch development, and we're just never able to get it to work right. And on Rome, we feel like we finally cracked the code on something like that. In Monte Carlo, there is this really cool uphill section in the map, and it's steeper and longer than anything we've done before, and so there's a lot of like difference in elevation there, and I feel like it kind of just speaks to some of the changes that we're willing to make with this game in order to introduce new gameplay and to have it feel fresh and vibrant for players.
Ich hoffe, die Maps enden nicht wie Paris oder Mondkolonie Horizon. Dass einfach nicht in Competitive gespielt werden können, weil die Maps so beschissen sind.
Classic Overwatch, like here's
Weil die Maps können ja geil ausschauen, aber es bringt ja nichts, wenn sie nicht fair sind, wenn sie nicht competitive sind.
A map, you know, maybe even I think people when they see it probably would compare to like I know Eichenwald when you're kind of going around the castle, but it's even steeper than that. Like,
Die es übrigens bis heute nicht gefixt haben, die beiden
You're
Maps.
looking at it and you're like, oh man, how were they getting up there? Like, it's such a cool dynamic though.
Yeah, definitely, and Eichenwald's a great example of it, but. Of rising through a map, but this one doesn't have a large structure in the middle of it, so you're going up this really big elevation and it's all open, and so there's a lot more interplay between the two teams as they're trying to push up the hill.
And I love the spawn rooms with the cars and everything.
Okay, Monaco ist schon geil.
Yeah, you just
Das
kinda
ist schon
see
echt cool.
both of these teams you know, come out of the spawn, just a lot of detail. I love leaning into the F1 when you have like the kind of car going around the track. Even the
Juhu,
checkpoints
Ferrari
and
für
the,
Arme.
you know, kind of like your
Quang Motors, Ferrari für Arme.
Yeah, you see this. So this first point is really interesting. I think. For a
Aber
lot
das
of
ist
people
geil.
Is,
Das feiere ich
where we'll
sowas.
see Zarya on defense. It's like a solo tank. Like you can play so many different ways, right? I've seen people play like really close up by like some of these staircases, a little bit further back. You can play the snipers up on the bridge. You can play
Ach, die
like
Payload
soldier
ist ein
up on the
Formel
bridge.
1-Wagen, oder was?
Just adds so much more dynamics
Das ist ja
to
geil.
play.
Yeah,
And you
definitely.
can see the payload is another. We're having fun with the payload here. It's a AI-driven F1 car race. So
In creating the escort maps, how does that different from some of the other things you guys are working on? Like push, hybrids, controls. Like, is there a different type of philosophy when going in to start like a map, for escort versus some of those other modes?
Yeah, there's a lot of differences between these types of modes, and when you do map design on Overwatch, like one of the things you always have to think about is where the spawn rooms are going to be and how you're going to get out of the spawn rooms. And obviously it's different. Coming out of a spawn room is different on a payload map than any of our other map types because you immediately start interacting with the objective. One of the toughest things about developing payload maps for Overwatch is the entire route needs to be like a certain minimum width just to be able to get the payload to fit through it. And usually you want to have enough space on the sides of it so that you can move around. We do have a few tight sections in our maps, but they're very short. Like right after you get the payload in King's Row, it gets very tight, but that's for a short period of time. And so when you do start making these wider areas, it becomes very difficult to control sightlines, and it gets easy to make very long sightlines through the map where it no longer really feels like an Overwatch map anymore because we really try to control those things. And I think it's why you see that a lot of the payload maps they do weave back and forth a lot, and so much of that is about controlling sightlines and then also presenting like difficult areas for a team to push through. Oh, this is the hilly section.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that's the area of verticality where like there's a sniper perch up here. It's kind of like that right hand side if we're looking at it. But yeah, just this poses so many different obstacles for
Ja, das ist schon geil, wenn du oben als Widow oder Ash stehst, da kannst du halt einfach runterballern, ne? Kannst du halt wegfarmen,
right now, both
die
teams play
Gegner.
Zarya, but like you could play really fast and kind of dive up onto the high ground. Like you could play really slow, kind of work your way around. It's this team is just actually kind of just rolling on through. Zarya seems to be the tank choice of the day.
Yeah.
And you
Like I
can
said,
see
that change is pretty new.
you can see from a visual standpoint when making a payload map, they're pretty large maps for an Overwatch space. So we want the visuals to kind of change as players complete
Das ist das
objectives.
Gefährliche, was er gerade gesagt hat.
The world looks
Zarya
different
scheint
to
der
them.
Pick des Abends zu sein,
it was
weil du
flat
einfach
before,
durchläufst.
and then
Und das ist
you
genau
reach
das,
the
was
first
ich meine die
objective, and
ganze
now you're on
Zeit.
the hill. And they'll move into the hotel for the final objective. So there's this visual progression to kind of your completing objectives. You feel like you're making progress through the map because the world around you is somewhat changing as it goes along.
Yeah, kind of like Dorado almost. Like
Right.
if you were to kind of think of a map from the live game where you kind of start through that choke area, it goes towards that high ground, and then you have that like interior. And the interior for this map is one of the cooler things that I've seen in Overwatch, and hopefully we'll get to see it. But just the tiering of it. How did that come about? With when we can go inside, we'll obviously have a better view of it. But it's really kind of like this multi-tiered vertical kind of like casino.
Ich bin extrem
It's so
skeptisch.
interesting.
Ich bin
Yeah,
so
it's a
skeptisch.
super cool space and really fun to fight through. I think over time, Overwatch map design has changed a little bit. Just the way that the game has changed a little bit. The presence or the importance of high ground really can't be understated in this game, and so we're trying to give more of that to teams, and trying to create kind of like conflict points in some of these maps and who's going to control that high ground.
Yeah, no, I think obviously as a shooter, right? Their high ground is always kind of the go-to, where Overwatch has always had the ability for multiple players to take high ground, whether it's like a Hanzo like we just saw there, like with a wall climb, or a Widow. But yeah, with like a multi-tiered level like this, it allows everybody to kind of have some access of high ground, which brings into play. I know Ana really kind of effective here at the high ground with the grenades as we see the payload kind of go over the line, and the car will go inside of the casino. I've seen a few cars inside of casinos in my day. They're usually not moving though. I think you know, depending on how the day went, maybe they're moving, but that's just from my point of view.
This is the hotel portion of the casino, the luxury.
Yeah, and you can see the high ground in the back over there. It's actually really difficult for us to put a lot of it into
Aber das
our
Problem ist auch,
game.
wenn du sagst High
One of
Ground.
the things we do in
Was
Overwatch
machst du denn mit den
is,
Tanks, die halt nicht
our
mobil
stairs
sind?
are very shallow. And we don't typically have any steep ramps in the entire game. And I think the game plays better that way. It feels smoother like that. But it makes it so hard. It just kills the level designers on the project trying to get people up to high ground because it takes a lot of space in order to do it.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a really interesting point that I guess I've never really kind of taken a kind of a notice of. Yeah, when you the stairs aren't very like these like long like windy climbs. Like there's kind of turns to get to that elevation. Is that just to keep everything smooth and just kind of movement predictable?
Yep. So that's part of it. To keep it smooth, keep movement predictable. It's also like it can be really like kind of difficult to overcome a really steep staircase. It's almost like a wall in front of you and you don't know what's going to be at the top of it. And so we always like for players to be able to run through our maps and to be able to look at a space and kind of develop a mental 3D image of where everything's going, of what the space is actually going to be like outside of their view. And it's easier to do that with shallower stairs. It's also easier to push up a shallower staircase and a higher staircase. And like lastly, just the way that a lot of games character physics work, it's also smoother to move on steep staircases or on shallow staircases.
I was gonna say the only really I guess steep staircase I can think of is the one on like Horizon Lunar Colony. You know, on the first point where you're kind of going up towards the balcony. And yeah, that does kind of prove like some of the things that you're talking about where I know we've all been there where a Junkrat is sitting on top of the stairs with Horizon. You can't see where he's shooting you from, and you're just kind of getting pelted on the way up. It's not the best of feelings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about that besides we are moving away from 2CP.
Die neue Drachenanimation finde ich gut.
Keep the combat
Die schaut cool aus.
I love this area. Like
Bisschen
you see
moderner.
that soldier sitting up top. Like one of the cool things about this.
Auch wenn ich so hoffentlich nie von innen sehe oder da nah dran bin, sondern immer gut abhauen kann davon.
Access that area. Like you can go around where we see
connected up there.
curly mustache rotating around, and it's connected. That's something we haven't really seen in a lot of Overwatch maps.
Yeah, we try to. We're very intentional with the way we do flanking routes, and we try to make it so that at least one team, like the team, can be aware of people that are coming on a flank.
Nach die Fröschchen und Lagerfrauchen.
Try to let you get all the way around behind the defense without having some way of knowing that it's coming or having the offense earning something like that. And we think this one's fair. We've gone back and forth on this a lot. There's been 30 different variations of this route, but hopefully this one's fair.
Depending on how your game goes, it's fair or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on who else is in the test. I actually have some questions from Twitter that I know some people have been pulling and just kind of just really, I think, things that people are interested in. For you guys, what change to character buff or nerf you guys most looking forward to that you guys have played around, implemented with thus far?
Wow, I mean that's a great question, to ask yesterday. But I think now that we've gone over a lot of what we've been working on, there's so many changes to characters all across the board, including all the big changes to the tank role, the hero passives that we're introducing with all the other roles in the game. So as well as like some of the work that we've been doing with like CC abilities in the game. So it's really hard to pick one of those.
My personal one is actually the one that we saw from BlizzCon Wine, was the Reinhardt stuff. As somebody who's always wanted to play Reinhardt, who's pretty tragic at it, being able to be
Oh, ich bin gespannt, wie Reinhard dagegen jetzt spielt.
Being able to be a little
Oh,
bit more
wow,
brawly
guck, was ein
and more
Schild.
offensive, is the type of Reinhardt play I want. When I just charge in without talking to any of my teammates currently, it doesn't work. I'm sure that
Now you can do that.
I'm sure that won't work in Overwatch 2 either, but I can at least put it in my mind that it could be a possibility. Yeah.
Von welchem Schild sprichst du? Naja, ich spreche von dem Stück Papier, was er da vor sich hinträgt. Von diesem blauen, durchsichtigen Stück Papier, das einfach ratzfatz eliminiert wird.
Yes, you play Reinhardt and you come out and you feed a few times, you're like, maybe this isn't for me. And then you just land that one shatter, that perfect shatter, and then you're just like, yep, I'm committing. It's such a...
Also sorry, aber das muss doch jemand mal auffallen. Ach so, du meinst das Accessoire. Ja, genau, ich meine das Accessoire hier.
How do you guys look at maintaining the balance between PvP and PvE? I assume they're kept like completely separate, like different environments. Like, but how do you guys?
Also Schilde, also jetzt sei mal nicht böse. Reinhard ist doch komplett nutzlos.
Look at a hero like Winston. Winston is super fun in PvP.
Du hebst halt einmal kurz mal, du drückst einmal kurz rechte Maustaste, dann macht's puff, dann explodiert's vor dir.
You're taking space, but you don't want to be too far ahead of your team or your healers and how you're committing and everything. But it's hard to translate that to a PvE environment, for example. So that in our early playtest of PvE was sort of like, it feels like he needs more, and then we started getting into like, okay, well, we really need to talk about if we're gonna keep these separate or.
Ich meine, ich finde cool, dass er seine
So a lot of the, like for instance, the current Winston alternate fire he has.
E-Fähigkeit stoppen kann, dass du pausieren kannst, finde ich super.
Like, oh, this is a lot more fun, and like, oh, I wonder if this could apply to the base kit. Plus, we're doing all the other chains of PvP, and so we started playing with it in PvP. So in those cases, like,
und ich bin mir nicht sicher, ob denen vorgegeben wird, welche Comp die spielen sollen. Damit es nicht zu offensichtlich wird, wenn der Reinhardt spielt, dass sein Schild nicht sofort nach 0,1 Sekunden sofort einfach weg ist und er komplett ausradiert wird.
Yeah, and this
I
might be...
have to mention one thing really quick because it's kind of fun. I did early on. I just had to make this prototype, but I did a prototype of like a PvP VE mode. I called it, which was like a hybrid mode. Because I think like I get the expectation
Echo
that
Soldier,
people probably ask about that.
Echo Soldier, Echo Reaper.
Try mode of it. And it was a little dirty because it was like there wasn't a lot of balance.
Echo Reaper,
like,
Hawk.
Like crazy PvE stuff in here. And
Keine Chance, du hast doch kein Schild mehr.
It was pretty tragic, but
das ist ein Zenyatta noch im Hintergrund, noch das Schildballer, das ist halt keine Chance.
Yeah, exactly. There's maybe a version that we could do that at some point in the future, but we don't have like direct plans for that right now because it was. One thing came out of it, like, this is fun, but like, man, this would be a lot of work trying to balance this anywhere close to.
Ich meine, ich möchte mal ganz kurz sagen, die sind mit Zarias, ist das andere Team durchgelaufen. Die kommen da jetzt nicht hoch, weil Reinhardt absolut nutzlos ist. Er ist komplett nutzlos. Er hat nicht mal eine Range-Attacke wirklich, weil Zarya kann wenigstens noch ihre Kugeln ballern. Er hat den Rechtsklick. Reinhardt muss halt, er kann es dann ausweichen noch.
That we were working on.
Sein Schild ist weg. Was für eine Überraschung.
Solve how you would put a capture the flag into like a main version of Overwatch, and we weren't really able to do it.
Zwei Fire Strikes. Ja, kannst einen links, einen rechts, in der Hoffnung, dass einer trifft.
We are working on one other one that I'm really excited about, and hopefully it's something that we'll be able to talk to our players in the community about later.
I love that.
Yes.
More ways to play is totally
Wap
fine.
Fire
with me,
Strike,
I'm sure
easy.
The rest of the community.
Ja, genau.
It's something that I've actually kind of like.
Also ich möchte das mal ganz kurz demonstrieren hier. Easy 2K. Ja, fantastisch. Muss erst mal eine halbe Stunde warten, bis die Bub-Ult dann da ist.
Made their way in. I feel like that has been a huge tool for you guys for really just kind of testing out the April Fool stuff. Jeff, I don't know if I can convince you, but give me the Flying Sigma. I don't know how that works in a solo tank, but like, give me Flying Sigma so I can just battle Pharos and ignore my team. But a lot of some of that stuff is really interesting that you guys are able to try with the experimental.
Yeah, it's been so powerful. I mean, I feel like.
Was, diese Mercy? What?
A developer's dream.
Oh, diese Rest? Ja, ich habe mich auch gerade gefragt, warum die da hinfliegen und den Rest. Was sind das für Spiele? Haben die schon mal Overwatch gespielt im Leben?
We've talked about in the past about expanding maybe even showing more.
Sieht fast aus wie meine Games.
You know, like, what if we showed like crazy early level layouts that was just all like gray box stuff? Like, how early can we show before it gets like really ridiculous?
Sieht aus wie meine Games irgendwie ein bisschen.
You know, a stick man with a gun. Like, is that just like not even worth giving feedback on or what? But like, so it's been powerful, and we're still looking at ways to sort of use it, and you know, it's just another great feedback tool we get from the community.
What's so funny, we were talking the other day, and it's like the April Fool's patch was ridiculous.
Ohne Scheiß, so spiele ich auch Tracer.
Some of the communities
So spiele ich auch Tracer.
We get Sigma's cool to fly for a day or two, but like we can't have that all the time, right?
Da war die Diva aber auch gnädig, dass sie in der Hammerreichweite vom Reinhard war. Da war sie auch gnädig, dass es nicht so ausschaut, als wäre Reinhard komplett nutzlos. Finde ich gut von der Diva, dass der Reinhard auch sagt, hier komm, darfst du auch mal was killen. Du hast halt keinen Brawl mehr wirklich.
The work from home is a bit of a mixed bag.
Hätten wir ein paar Top 500 Streamer ranholen können.
When we first started, we were really worried about how productive the team
Ohne
would
Mist,
be.
ich hätte gern Imong und Fletz da drin gesehen. Weil die beiden gucke ich gerne, die sind Top 500 Tanks. Ich würde gern denen ihre Meinung wissen und hätte auch gern gesehen, wie die damit spielen. Also gerade hier, wie Fletz den Reinhard spielt, wie Imong Zarya spielt zum Beispiel. Dann ML7 zum Beispiel als Anna, J3.
We don't all have home offices, you know, like I just work in my bedroom, you know, I just have to make sure I make my bed every day before I go on calls. And then the team, it's really grown.
Imong, Habloy, Flats,
when we
ja
shipped
genau.
Overwatch 1, when it launched, we were around 60 to 70 people. And the team has continued to grow from there. And I don't think we're at quite 200 yet, but we just keep growing because the game that we're making
Ich hoffe nicht, dass das Overwatch League
Overwatch
Spiel
2,
ist im
it's a
Übrigen.
much bigger game.
Sonst wäre das echt peinlich.
It's even a bigger game than, like, even when I started to hear about Overwatch 2, it was like, oh, cool, like, yeah, like, this is gonna, I want
Das wäre lustig, wenn das alles Overwatch League Spiele
like, just kind
sind.
of hearing everything that goes involved with it.
Aber das kann ich mir nicht vorstellen, so wie die spielen.
And, you know, now all these massive changes to PvP, like, the scope of the game is so big.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
But it's really exciting working on something.
Ich hätte auch gerne zum Beispiel gesehen Dingens. Ich würde auch gerne Fitzy hier sehen, wie er Sombra spielt. Weil ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass Sombra gut ist und Bastion Main noch. Bastion Main, der nur Bastion spielt. Würde ich gerne mal sehen, wie du Bastion da platt machst in der Com. Oder wie Bastion einfach alle wegräumt. Weißt du, was ich meine?
Keeping the PvP of Overwatch as competitive as possible, and we are
einfach mal die ganzen One-Tricks zusammenpacken und dann so, und jetzt spielen wir mal. Und dann mal gucken, ob das Spiel wirklich noch balanced und fair ist. Da kriegst du eine relativ gute Einschätzung nämlich.
Evolution as, right? You know, pushing the game forward, you know, coming up with new kind of creative ways to play. So this Transcendence may seal the deal here.
Yes.
Reaper did his dance on the cart and he was gone. So, that kind of concludes.
Ich bin nicht wirklich überzeugt.
I'm sure the devs are going to. They'll know who won and lost. I was not keeping score of the matches. I'm sure they'll be pretty angry that we didn't keep score of who won and lost, but. Just a really awesome showcase of the PvP side of the game today. You guys could just kind of give one lasting message to like everybody out there who's you know, playing Overwatch 1, interested in Overwatch 2 with all these PvP changes today. What would it be?
I guess I'd say thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for like the support and the communication, like the active communication that has been present from our community ever since even from before Overwatch came out. So one, I'd like to just give a heartfelt thank you to everyone that's watching and has been involved in our communities throughout the years. And I also want to let you know that we are still listening and we are still taking feedback on this game, and more than anything, we just want it to be the best version of itself that it can be, and we're committed to making it that. We come into work every day kind of like passionate and excited to work on this game, whether it's some of the some of the things in hero mode that we're doing for the PvE side of the game, or whether it's the maps or heroes that we're working on for the PvP side of the game. So thank you all. Thank you for letting us build this game for all of you, because we love doing it.
Mal schauen, wie lange noch in Overwatch 2 rauskommt, die das genau so rausbringt und einfach dann die Playerbase.
Said, of course, thanks to community. I mean, a lot of this kind of changes, especially all this experimentation and things we've done starting Overwatch 2, was directly getting feedback from the community and hearing what people liked and didn't like, and hopefully that comes across. Also to mention that obviously, I think I've thrown it out a lot already, but this is all like pretty early work in progress still. We're still trying a lot of stuff.
Gab's jemand, der gesagt hat, wir wollen 5v5? Gab's da jemanden?
Very actively working on this stuff.
Habe ich, glaube ich, nicht
so
gehört.
If you like see something like, you know, I see Doomfist running around and, you know, smash people against walls, and I can imagine somebody like, oh, Doomfist is still doing his, you know, stun combo kill, but like, you know, I suspect we'll be making a lot of changes to him, for example, especially if we do CC changes. So it's sort of like the double-edged sword of like being able to show you guys the stuff really early is, you know, some of it's not quite done yet, but I think it's been awesome to really, you know, try to keep communication.
Also hat jemand 5v5 gewollt? Jetzt mal ernsthafte Frage. Wollte jemand 5v5 haben? Ich glaube nicht. Ich kenne keinen. Nicht mal Samito wollte das, und der ist der größte Hater von allem, den ich übrigens nicht gucken kann. Der Typ triggert mich. Der ist immer auf 180, der weiß immer alles besser.
Yeah, no, obviously kind of, we're working with you guys on some of the stuff like this, and then some of the other members of the Overwatch team, like your guys' passion to just make this game the best is something that comes through in every conversation. So really excited to see what you guys
muss mal gucken, ob die anderen
in
gestreamt
store
haben.
for the
Mich würde echt
future of the
interessieren,
game. Aaron, what's next? What can, you know, the
was die
community
dazu
look
sagen.
for? I think you guys have an AMA going on.
Yep, we have one coming up in just a few days. It's going to be on the main Overwatch Reddit. Or subreddit, sorry. So tune into that, and I think it's the 3 of us. Don't quote me on that.
He's signing up Dion for it.
Like, oh, okay.
If it's not you guys, you just got signed up. I'll send the.
Aaron, let me know.
Yes,
we'll
someone's going to be there answering questions.
Yeah, we'll send the Outlook invites. We'll get everybody in here counting again, like we did this morning. No, nothing will be needed for that. But yeah, and then we have Overwatch League kicking off again tomorrow. We'll be discussing a lot of the things that we're talking about today here at 11:30 PT. And don't forget, guys, the Overwatch Anniversary event is going on right now in-game. Some really awesome skins to earn. You can get that combat, the new Ana skin, by winning games. Or you can just keep losing games constantly and eventually get it just way slower. Thank you guys so much for everything today. Truly a blast. Thank you, Aaron, Jeff, and Dion. That'll be it from us. Follow Play Overwatch on all social medias to stay up with all the latest news for Overwatch 2. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Jo, danke dafür. Okay. Okay, that happened. Ich habe meine Meinung schon gesagt. Lassen wir uns überraschen. Ja. Ich werde mal gucken, vielleicht kann ich mal einen Workshop-Code zusammenklöppeln, dass man 5v5 macht mit ein paar Änderungen, was die gemacht haben. Ich muss mal mich im Workshop einarbeiten, das würde mich mal interessieren. Ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass es fair ist, dass es balanced ist und dass es mit den neuen Helden nicht noch schlimmer wird und noch kaputter machen. Ich kann es mir persönlich nicht vorstellen. Ich finde die neuen Maps gut. Ich finde die Game Mode super. Ich finde einige Upgrades, die sie den Helden verpasst haben, finde ich gut. Keine Frage. Ich bin aber skeptisch, ob 5v5 die Probleme löst, die man hat, ob es dadurch competitiver wird Oder ob sie dadurch nicht einfach irgendwas schaffen, wo es einfach auf Glück ankommt, dass du halt gute Leute da hast. Also, Stand jetzt würde ich sagen, Solo-Queuing ist jetzt schon beschissen. Mit dieser Änderung wird es noch beschissener. Wenn du Solo-Queue machst, hast du keine Chance. Kann ich mir nicht vorstellen. Du bist jetzt schon von deinem Team abhängig. Du bist noch mehr von deinem Team abhängig. Kann ich mir nicht vorstellen, dass das effektiv funktioniert. Ich kenne meine Games. Die Games, wo es super funktioniert, sind die, wo du am meisten Kommunikations hast. Und das ist aber ein Punkt, das hast du in einem von 5 Games. Oder in einem von 10 Games. Und das sind die besten Games, die du haben kannst. Gibt es in Overwatch 2 nicht Clans etc.? Angeblich soll es Clans geben. Die Diskussion gibt es jetzt schon lange mit Clans in Overwatch. Angeblich wollen sie das reinmachen. Habe ich auch irgendwas gelesen, gerüchtemäßig. Aber die Frage ist, wie du das halt dann machst. Also hast du dann Competitive, hast du Clan Competitive? Was passiert, wenn du Solo-Queue machst? Wenn du nicht in einem Clan bist, was passiert dann? Also wie ist das dann? Weil Stand heute ist es ja so, wenn du... Wenn du Diamond bist, Master oder GM zum Beispiel, kannst du kein Competitive spielen. Zusammen. Du kannst nicht zusammen queuen zum Beispiel. Irgendwas war ab einem gewissen, bist du Master oder GM, kannst du, glaube ich, nicht mehr als 2 Leute in der Queue dann haben. In der Gruppe sein zum Beispiel. Wie das dann mit Clans ist, keine Ahnung. Weil wenn du so einen riesen Clan hast, keine Ahnung, farmst nach oben, weiß ich nicht. Lassen wir uns mal überraschen. Für Quickplay... Weiß ich nicht. Das ist das gleiche Problem. Also Quickplay, Competitive, alles das gleiche. Ich lasse mich überraschen. Schauen wir mal. Gucken wir mal, wo die Reise hingeht.